3, 2, 1, and welcome back to Chasing the Racing, episode 39. And I'm sat opposite a very slimmed down Dominic Herbertson. How are you doing, son?
Oh, grand. Just a few weekends up in Scotland there, on the west coast. But I'm not going to discuss any further details. Yeah. How the hell are you? You look fat.
Well, obviously, for those that listen to the show regularly, you'll know that we've been doing a January weight loss challenge. So after Christmas, we both got weighed in, and we've just had our final weigh-in of just before we started this episode, followed by a massive, I was going to say 3-course meal, but I think you had
Honestly,
about
I
5 or
had
6.
Mate, if I fall asleep or pass out or throw up, honestly,
Blame me, mother.
oh, your mother is an absolute angel. I'm telling you, because I've never I've stuffed my face.
That's a good one.
All that weight I've lost, I've just piled back on within 20 minutes.
So we'll be reading out the scores, if you can call it scores, very shortly. But first, I think we've got a sponsor, haven't we, Dom?
We do indeed. We're making new levels, mate. We're reaching new heights. We're doing new things. Our newest sponsor is, in fact, hold on. See, this out. I'm getting nervous now because you normally do this thing, Chrissy. But our sponsor for this episode is the Carol Nash MCN London Motorcycle Show. And the show takes place on the 14th, 15th and 16th of February at the XL London, old London there, which is absolutely brilliant. But the important thing they want to get across on this one is the fact that they have discounted tickets on sale. And at the moment, they are just £18. The offer ends at midnight on the 12th of February. But everything after the 12th of February, the price goes up to £23. Yeah, honestly, Chrissy, I've overfed. Yeah, I'm going to struggle to finish this. But there is an option to buy a Paddock Pass, which guarantees a seat given a great view of the Michelin Thunderdrome Racing.
That's what you're doing, isn't it? Mini bikes.
No, it's like Honda 150, but they've got built up berms, they've got jumps, they've got all sorts. It looks absolutely amazing. And obviously it's me, Craig Neve, Jamie Coward, Michael Rutter. It's Peter Hickman's going, John McGuinness, that lad we've had on the podcast.
Bit like a mini TT race, isn't it? Is it like flat track type or motocross? Or
it's flat track style racing, right. So it's a case of it's my opportunity to win a TT by T-boning all the top competitors clean out of it. But obviously with this Paddock Pass, you get the opportunity to have fantastic seats watching the Thunderdrome race, and the visitors get a chance to meet all the celebrity riders. And me. As you know, John McGuinness is back riding in this year, so we've got plenty of scales and frills and spills all over this year. The racing gets very competitive over riders, obviously that list of riders we've just gone through, but the most important thing to remember is to get yourself on the website for the mcnmotorcycleshow.com. And obviously get your tickets. Obviously, the earlier book them, the cheaper they are, and everyone likes a cheap deal, don't they?
So are you there on the Saturday and Sunday?
No, I'm there the 14th, 15th and 16th.
Oh, brilliant. For Valentine's Day and then the weekend, isn't it?
I love that, right?
I'm down there on the Saturday as well too, so I'll see you down there.
There we go, ideal. Oh, a couple of northern lads down there. But anyway, the episode is sponsored by the Carol Nash MCN London Motorcycle Show. I know that. I think you do it a lot more professionally than I do, Chrissy, but obviously it's something that we're going to talk about in the show, and it's obviously something that we're going to talk about leading up to the event. So
speaking of going up in the world in professionalism,
mate, I'm totally done in here. I think I'm having hallucinations.
Speaking of going up in professionalism, we've added to our YouTube channel this episode, and we've invested in a second camera. So I'm hoping if this is a success and it goes out on YouTube, you'll be getting like a camera of just me and a camera of just Dom, and it'll be kind of flicking between
we know
the
where
two.
the views are going to go, don't we? Obviously yours, mine's just going to be I prefer the SAS look myself. The blurred feature, a moustache and a cigar bleating off in the background.
I tell you what, let's start with the weight loss challenge. And we both got weighed right at the beginning of the month, so straight after Christmas. Obviously, that's pretty much as heavy as we get throughout the year, really, isn't it? Like, you sort of, after the season, you have a few months. You've got a bit of time before you have to start your training, and obviously Christmas and whatever. You naturally put on a few kilograms or a few stone.
Naturally, more force fed.
And so we both got weighed in. I was 73.2 kilograms. The pictures went out on our Instagram, and you were
Sorry, I
think it was 83.7. Which was like 13. You were 13 stone.
13 flat. I think
pretty much exactly.
The scales were creaking.
And obviously we've tried proper hard over the last month.
If you can see this on YouTube, I'm struggling like mad here.
We've been training. We've been watching what we've been eating. We've been just doing our best. And it got to this morning, and I thought obviously I knew we were having the weigh-in tonight, so I got up. I think I had about a sausage for breakfast. Then I went to the gym for like
Chrissy,
2 hours.
Whatever you do in your spare time has got nothing to do with us, son. I think our listeners don't need to quite indulge in these facts. So, a little bit over exercise in the morning with the extra sausage. Oh, there you are. You're cheating already.
I had no food pretty much all day, liquids or anything. I'd proper try to slim down, and to be honest, I thought I'd done quite well. I weighed in at 68 kilos, so I lost 5.2 kilos. And then Dom got on the scales, and I was thinking he's doing well if he's under 5 kilos. So obviously you was it 83.7?
83.7, aye. So I'm gonna have to look through our own Instagram page.
You had to be 77.7. Oh no, was it 5.3? 77.4 or less. You stepped on the scales. What were you? Can you remember?
I can't, honestly, I'm in a food coma here right now, Chrissy.
Well, we've got the pictures, but I think it was 70.
Leave it. Oh, no,
75 kilos you were, I think. So you've lost 8.7 kilos?
Something like that, aye.
Absolutely mental. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
£100. I'll stump up the £100 to the
Chosen charity.
Charity, which
Injured Riders Welfare Fund.
That's the one. And but to be honest, like, we're both obviously racing this year. We've both got to cut down our weight, so it's been kind of adding a bit of a competition to it.
But in the same breath, though, I'm the chunky monkey on the team, aren't I? You know what I mean?
To lose, it's just over a stone in it, or it's about like bang on a stone
or something like that, isn't it? So
to do that in a month, I take my hat off to you. To be honest, you have done well. So
mate,
congratulations.
I've been absolutely miserable because obviously the mad thing is, we've slipped off the ladder a couple of times because we've put loads of work into this, like the interviews at the moment, because obviously what we've done in the past is the Skype, it's brilliant for like the likes of Davo and, them Southerners like James Hillier all the way down there. But the fact that when you sit down, you have a bit of crack with two people, it's so much more, electric, isn't it? When you're in the room, you haven't got anywhere to hide. And we've tried to like massively step up our own game by going to see the riders.
That's it, yeah. And
it seems to be paying off.
So some of the guests did it, like you alluded to. It's obviously, like say, Hillier or especially Davo over in Australia. It's impossible to meet up in person to do those interviews
unless they're willing to pay the tickets.
But we made an effort. It was like 2 weeks ago now to go down, and we did a bit of a tour. We got five interviews in. Sorry,
we're both gonna throw up. This is not a classy show whatsoever.
We did 5 interviews in 2 days, and it's just you get a much better interview without that. Do you know that sort of delay on Skype where you kind of?
Well, it's not just that you do, don't you? When you're on the phone to someone, you just can't.
It's not the same, is it?
I'll just take my hands off the steering wheel and just do my laces or something like that. You just get distracted, don't you? Mm-hmm. But when you're having a conversation with someone, unless you're rude, you obviously you get involved with it more. And I think, especially with the Whitten one, and what I've personally enjoyed is how everyone was like, the Whitten one's the best one yet, and then McGuinness has stepped up, and quite frankly, we've peaked, haven't we? It's like having sex twice in one night. You're like, yeah, this is going to happen for the rest of our lives, and it never happens again.
Yeah, it was a massive 2.
Not like you this morning, you little handsome devil.
It was a massive 2 podcasts, obviously, off the back, and our records have been like absolutely annihilated over the last few weeks. Every week we've stepped it up, and our downloads have just been through the roof. So yeah, it's been brilliant. And obviously we recently got Instagram as well, so we've had quite a big, people are starting to follow that. And
whoops, steady on. Sorry, no, I'm just knocking over the Dodge, the budget motorhome we've got here, which is fantastic. But my only upsetting thing is because we're doing the tour, and we've obviously been we've had unbelievable guests that have taken their time to do it for us, haven't they? Mm-hmm. But the only thing is, we've kind of disconnected with what the current crack is, haven't we? So we've got a huge backlog of what's been going on.
I will just say as well, obviously our last podcast were recorded at McGuinness's house like 2 weeks ago. So like you say, we didn't have any of the recent crack, but also when we stuck the James Whittam podcast out, I ran a little competition for BSB tickets. So if they shared the post, so I've just picked somebody at random there, and we've went through it was Twitter.
Hold on. I'll tell you what. Who actually did it? And she's hiding in the outskirts here off the show. It's Zoe. Obviously, we're going to get Zoe Burn on from UK ClubSport to do her little bit, but in person. So obviously, get a bit more of an electric vibe from there. And obviously, we're just going to. I'll tell you what, Zoe. We'll scroll you through. We'll just let you scroll through there. We'll just hand this offset for a moment. Let her scroll through, and then she'll point one out. You got one, champion? Oh, it's very quiet. You're very good at this side stage. Oh, fantastic. Right, hold on. It'll be grand. It'll be grand. Pick the name. Who we got?
So we've got...
Have I clocked this off? Hold on. I am absolutely bloody... I'm picking one now. Screw this, Zoe. You've had your chance, honey. You've had your chance. You've had your chance. One moment. Right, here we go. I am picking Tristan... How do you say that? Tristan Peck.
It's
Tristan Peck. Tristan Peck. You sound like a gym membership. Hold on. Truck driver, Saracens, Rugby Football Club, England Cricket, New York Islanders, motorcycle, cycling, and cats.
And he's got a cat.
Everyone loves cats. Everyone loves a bit of pussy. Why are you crying, Chrissy? Good man. Anyway, you've won the tickets, my man. Tristan Peck.
That's 2 tickets to any BSB meeting.
Your cat can come. There you are.
I'll get in touch on Twitter, and then if you just I'll send you a message and just pick any BSB round. I'll sort you 2 tickets out. So thanks very much and thanks to everyone that shared that. And I will also say,
160 retweets. Honestly, you and me, we're boiling over the edge here. He's crying with laughter. I'm going to throw up. Oh, God, I'm like a whinging tart. Yeah, so anyway, let's carry on with the show.
I was just going to say, actually going down, as well as the interviews sort of be working better as well, actually going down and, spending some time with Whittam, McGuinness, and, the other guests, it was a bit... as we were pulling up at McGuinness's house, I was getting a bit of a, I was kind of like, this. It sort of felt surreal, like somebody I've grown up watching and like idolized, and we're like going to his house and like having a day with it. I thought it was amazing, and it's one of those things like 30 years down the line we'll be like, oh, can you remember that day we went to McGuinness's house and you rode a speedway bike and whatever. So it was a bit surreal though, wasn't it?
And obviously that footage that you got on your phone didn't see the ones that I crashed high-sided, flipped over the roof. I'm surprised I'm fit and able for this season, man. It was mental. Absolutely mental. But I would say we've missed absolutely loads of crack. Let's start off with Davy Todd, broken collarbone, riding for Honda. He must have been absolutely gutted. And obviously,
that was he was training over in the States as well, only at the time, I think.
We interviewed him again, didn't we? Because
he was over in California, I think, training
did he do
with
it then?
Brad Ward, and I think it was a motocross incident, I think, but I'm not sure.
No, but I'm saying, was he absolutely knackered then, or was he?
Oh, no, he only recently did his collarbone,
right,
and then he flew back, got surgery and everything, and he'll be all right.
He's actually just signed for Alpine Stars, hasn't he? So he's changed from RST over to Alpine Stars. So
that's right.
Obviously the photos, he's up and looking lean, and obviously Glenn and what's his brother's name?
Andrew.
That's him, Andrew. So they've been out playing around on the road going ones for
they launched the new Honda over in. Sorry, I'm getting terrible indigestion. It is the tonic water, I think, isn't it? Is it Sepang? Somewhere, Bahrain, yeah. They're over in Bahrain, the launch of the new Honda. I seen Alistair Fagan, 44 Teeth were out there, and obviously the BSB Honda lads and whatever. The sort of talk of that new Honda is that it's quite a small bike. It's a bit flat first 7,000, but then the power's unreal up the top end. So it's like a revvy bike. All the sort of power figures and everything look strong. The speeds. So I think we could.
When's the last time there was like an honest review on a bike?
Well,
no. Think about. I can't remember the last time there was a review on a bike, and it came up. Like, let's use an example. New BMW. Shite. When's the last time you saw that in a magazine?
I guess when the
you know what I mean though.
The reporters they get
some
paid.
cash back.
They get paid to go out and like test for the review of a bike. So they probably wouldn't get invited back if they wrote something negative.
But then
chances of them ever advertising with that magazine or publication again.
Yeah, so I suppose there is a little bit of a conflict of interest.
But fair enough.
I know what you're saying.
Hold on, you know what I mean?
There's never a launch of a bike and somebody goes, well,
this was a
bit of a disappointment.
Well, no, but that's what I mean. No, but like
it's always like faster, better, smoother.
But they said that about the bloody last SP. You know what I mean? And
That's
the last SP they claimed was 212 stock. It chucked John McGuinness into a golf course, and it nearly killed a national treasure, Guy Martin. You know what I mean? At what point? And the thing is, the only bikes I got going, like throughout the whole year, right, were Clive Padgett's bikes, and he was on the older stuff.
Oh, was he? I didn't know that.
Exactly. So it's like,
well, I guess
this new bike is you're riding for MSS cars. What are you panicking about? But like. The new SP, they're claiming 216. If that's the case, out the box, I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. But when you look at Leon Haslam at the moment, he's absolutely smashing the times, isn't he? Because where are they testing?
He's doing well compared to Bautista, but he's
what's Bautista on?
Their teammates.
But what's his review on the bike?
Oh, he's like 2 seconds slower than Haslam.
What's his review on the bike?
Well, I'm not sure, but Haslam's doing like sort of where you would expect, or a little bit faster. He's not like right up the front of the top sheets. There's like the usual suspects that you would expect to see there. Then there's a bit of a gap to Haslam, but then Bautista's the surprise because obviously he'd been like championship rival last year, winning all those races, and he is miles off the pace. So, but like, I mean, when we interviewed Davey, we were speaking about it, and I was saying, the first year when a new bike comes out, it's very difficult to just take it out the box and be competitive on straight away. The people say that about the V4 Ducati this year, but that was actually designed the year before, and it had a full year of testing program and whatever. So by the time it sort of came out as a race bike, it had already had loads and loads of development and stuff. So to just bring a bike, obviously Honda will have been doing stuff over the the last year or so on this one, but it's unlikely that they're just going to go into BSB and smoke everyone straight away.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I would love to see that happen. I generally would, because you know why? Kawasaki's would be cheaper, BMWs would be cheaper, Ducatis would be cheaper, because the thing is, we're all like sheep in this game. We generally are, you know what I mean? Especially at club racing and Thundersport. It doesn't matter. I take that back. Even stock 1000 BMW, stock 1000 championship. The fact is, think about it. No one's on Hondas anymore. Hold on, who is on Honda? The Neve lads are on them this year. Yeah, is that right?
They're not a very popular bike in club racing.
No, they're not. But like when you think that escalation, and we are like sheep in this game, it's a bit like, what is the quickest bike out there? Mm-hmm. And it'll be interesting because Honda used to have such a solid, reliable TT world level
it was a bike
winning.
For the roads, wasn't it? For years.
But the thing is, like, you've got Marquez at the moment who's carrying that name. Mm-hmm. Marquez could win on a penny farthing, man. You know what I mean? I genuinely believe you could put Marquez on any bike. But look at what happened with Lorenzo, who's now incidentally working for Yamaha at the moment.
Mark's the only one that really did anything, the Honda this year.
He's the only one who can wrap his head around that bike. Mm-hmm. And you just think, if it wasn't for Marquez, where would Honda... You know what I mean? Like,
we've mentioned loads of times about where have Honda been over the last, 3-4 years in superbike racing, and they really have fallen off a cliff.
I hope they turn it around.
You could even say longer than that, like 5, 6, 7 years. They haven't really done anything in world superbikes. BSB's been the strongest, but they've never had like a solid, since Alex Lowe's left on the Samsung Honda, they've never really had a strong, solid championship
BSB front.
Yeah, like a championship protagonist. So it'll be. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like, and obviously in terms of entertainment, you kind of want everyone to be pushing everyone on. So it'll be
stock, for me though, it's the stock 1000 class that says everything about a bike. Mm-hmm. That's the truth of it. You know what I mean? Because obviously the rules are a lot more restricting at the sharp end. Shall we say, like the BSB class? Mm-hmm. But then stock 1000 is proper. Look, if you've got it, you can run it.
Mm-hmm. And Speaking of stock 1000, have you seen Jenny Tinmouth's been out with the Phil Crow lot.
Oh, God, yeah.
Did you see Willie Wilson's crash?
Jesus whip. Well, Phil Crow, obviously, follow him on Crow Performance on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and all that. And you'll see he's pretty much been openly taking the piss out of one of his best mates. The lad is an absolute mess, man. He looks like he's just been knocked the living shite out of by Conor McGregor.
Oh.
Like
I went down turn 8 at Jerez, which is... If you go down the back straight, you've got a hairpin right, and then you've got that first left, that's turn 7, and then it's the next fast left-hander. I think he thinks, because he had a little slip-off just before that, fixed the bike, went back out, and I think there was maybe a stone in the brake or something, and the brakes locked on. He hit the tyre wall, big impact, and then the bike went over the tyre wall. So
Phil was saying 140 mile an hour, something like that.
Yeah,
going
it's a
in
fast
there.
one. Face all black and blue, broke his leg, got like a cage on his little... Proper job, like. He's
a whip of a lad anyway.
Send our best wishes anyway to Lee and I hope he's all right.
I'll have to ask the DC Racin, the new kids on the block. DC Racin, they're the brand new roads team. They're coming out for this year. They've got Mike Norbury on board, the world's fastest strawberry. Now we're gonna have to get them lads on as an interview because, like, the thing is, we haven't really got any fresh teams. They are the only fresh team on the scene. They were out there testing, so they're here to mean business. Or quite frankly, they don't have to mean business. They could just be doing something for the crack, but the way they present themselves, the way they're attacking, testing, the way that everything, I think they're a name to be in the paddock. But obviously, everything's not... Rome wasn't built in a day and a half. So it'll be exciting to see about that.
So, and also, Paul Jordan's been in the news recently.
Oh, yeah. Jesus. What's happened there? That was a bit of a left hook.
You're mates with Paul, aren't you? Have you got any crack on?
He's Irish, yeah. He's right. The Northern Irish, I've got to make that a distinctive... No. Me and Paul rode for the same team at the Macau Grand Prix, and we did an Ulster together.
RC Express.
Absolutely. Everyone, absolutely solid bunch of people, really are. And obviously, the thing is, loose lips sink ships, and they're holding to that because they're all professionals. If you know what I mean. So it's as much as I want to pick up the phone and go, right, what's the crack? I've got a podcast to fill in with Christy and I want to look impressive. But none of them are saying anything. But they've obviously
they've parted ways. Any ideas who's going to be riding for RC or where Paul's going?
I have no idea who's going to be riding for RC. Obviously, they're an established name in the paddock. Like, their Super Twin is absolutely on point. The team don't have a super bike, but they've got good, well managed stock machinery,
which they're running the super bike.
Yep. They've bought.
Right.
I'm not sure if I should have said that.
Well, you have now. So
I have now. I think they have. Now, until it's rolled out on Glencountry Road, I have no idea if I've slipped that out anyway. But, no, so it's a case of I have no idea who they've got on board for them. But you see, it's a good stepping stone, really is, because obviously Ivan, Dean Harrison, they've had some solid teams.
Cracking riders.
And especially when it comes to roads, experience is key, especially with a team, because if you turn up, it's a stressful environment anyway. But you've got someone there that knows the paddock layouts, knows the organisers. It's whoever steps up to that is a great opportunity for them. It really is.
What about Paul? Any ideas? Anything on the rumour mill?
My rumour mill is my own presumption. This is my own rumour mill, and I hope it's right. But, well, at the moment, Derek Shields has gone from Burrows. That was an amicable split. I'm burping like a bugger into this, mate.
It's that tonic water, mate. We're going to have to lay off.
We're going to have to lay off it. But, no, so at the moment, it's a bit like Derek Shields has gone, but where to? Haven't a clue. Absolutely haven't a clue. And then you think, like, Gary Johnson's very quiet. Where's he going? But then, you see, it's a total stab in the dark. But I reckon it could possibly be RAF Reserves. Now, my reason behind... For Paul. Now, that is an absolute stab in the dark, solely because I think... I just solely think because the Kawasaki background, Paul stepped up another level. He was always in the top 5 at the Northwest, his best year to date. And I think just on the sheer side of Gary being quiet, I think, where's Gary going? Because Gary's done his own thing in the past, but I just think it's a team that's been quite quiet, and it's the only team at Rhodes at a level that Paul rides at that hasn't said anything. So that's my rumour mill.
Fair enough.
I reckon it's a potential.
Well, spot on. And
I was speaking up, like I went to pick up Paul's gear, but Paul didn't say nothing. I'm generally gutted.
Oh, you're quizzing him.
I was quizzing him. I'm like, what's the crack here then? And like, obviously, Paul's got rides sorted, which is the main thing, because the lad deserves them, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, have you got anything else before? Obviously, we haven't actually announced that this podcast, obviously, when it goes out, it'll be labelled as such, so people will know. But we've got a pre-recording conversation with one of your heroes, Mr. Jack Burnicle, the Eurosport commentator. And
without a doubt, one of my heroes. I got a little bit fangirly there. Like, it was like, oh, Jack! Oh, Jack! Get your pants down.
And what a lovely bloke. He's
what a lovely man.
I know,
honestly,
cracking bloke in the end.
I'll tell you what made me laugh though. Right now, thing is, he's definitely one of my heroes, because now the reason you'll hear that in the interview, but the sheer fact that this lad is a professional, he interviews people throughout the whole world. This should be absolutely nothing to him. And you know what? He was a bit nervous. Wasn't he? He was a bit like, well, what do you want? How we're going to do it, And I'm like, bloody hell, Jack Burnicle's a little bit nervous. But then it suddenly dawned on us. It's a bit like his job is to talk about the sport, is to talk to people about the sport. So I think he was a bit put on the spot that someone wanted to interview him about his cracking story. But it's I
thought it was really interesting, and I can't remember exactly what we talked about and stuff, but I remember leaving the interview and thinking it was a bit different, and obviously
I think it was mint, absolutely mint. This tonic's knacking us. We're not doing this again, man.
Because Jack hasn't raced himself. It's kind of a different angle on the sport. Obviously, he knows
motocross mad.
He knows so much about the sport, but from a different sort of angle. And I think that's interesting. And I think for people at home watching, a lot of them won't have raced. So he maybe gives where Whittam and James Hayden and those commentators all are speaking from experience of knowing the tracks, knowing the bikes. Jack gives a different sort of angle, and I like that. And I think him and Whittam work really well together, sort of bouncing.
Proper dry crack and everything like that.
So.
And obviously the fact that, him and his family have invited Wayne to their home on Saturday afternoon or something like that. I was like, oh, just get yourself
lovely spot as well, wasn't it?
Hellish eye down on the Mersey.
The Mersey.
Well, on that note, should we go ahead and interview it?
Yeah,
interview it. Oh, Chrissy, it feels like, how many weeks has it been? Chrissy, just tell me to shut the fuck up.
So over to Jack Burnicle, ladies and gentlemen.
So here we are, and I'm really excited about this guest. I'm actually meeting one of my heroes. I might tear up, so I do apologise. Here we have it, ladies and gentlemen, Jack Burnicle.
How are we doing, Jack?
We're doing all right, thank you.
Happy
New Year, boys.
Happy New Year. Thanks very much for welcoming us down here at this beautiful house down by the Mersey. So
50 yards that way.
Yeah, not far at all. And obviously on the commentary booth when you commentate, you regularly mention the fact that your Northeast heritage and the link that you've got with us Northeast lads. So where exactly did you grow up?
Not as far northeast as you guys. Billingham upon Tees.
Is that more Middlesbrough area?
He's a southerner. He's a southerner, really. They are.
South Durham, lad. South Durham. North of across the Tees from Middlesbrough.
Oh, smashing.
My dad was an organist and choir master in Middlesbrough, so I used to have to cross the Tees regularly every Sunday as a kid.
Right. So did you sort of go to school around there and then?
Yeah, I went. They didn't have a grammar school in Billingham back then, so I used to get the bus to Old Hartlepool. On the promontory at Old Hartlepool at Henry Smith Grammar School, which is since it was such a disgraceful place, it's been flattened since.
See what happens when the royalty moves out. You know what I mean? Just level it. I tell you what, briefly, obviously, we obviously got this recording now, and we had a quick conversation prior, and you were explaining Old Hartlepool and West, East, West. It sounded like a gang warfare, to be fair.
Well, my family origins are in West Hartlepool. There used to be West Hartlepool, which was the kind of Victorian town, and Old Hartlepool, the ancient promontory where St Hilda's Church is, and the Breakwater and the Fish Quay and all that. And that was where the school was. So that's why the football team was Hartlepools United, because it was two towns. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of joined them together, which is absurd, and just called the whole place Hartlepool. And I'm thinking, no, it's not. It's two towns. You know what I mean? And I was surprised you haven't heard of Seaton Carew, where my great.
It's all the way down south, man. I can't.
Seaton Carew is Hartlepool's holiday resort, mate, and my ancestors were lighthouse keepers there. Aye.
So you know your family tree well, then, do you?
Not bad, because if you look in Seaton Carew Parish Churchyard, there's a huge
statue of Jack Burnicle. The only man who made it out.
There's a huge 6-foot gravestone that has half my family history on it, the Burnicle family history, going back to the guy who looked after Seaton Carew Lighthouse, who was originally port manager at Middlesbrough.
Oh, fantastic.
There you go. The Burnicles, as people say around here.
Oh, brilliant. And then when did you sort of, fly the nest?
Oh, when I went to art college at Newcastle. I went up to Newcastle to art college in Ellison Place. The bit of the art college was that I was in, and that got flattened by T. Dan Smith building a blooming great motorway through the edge of it that kind of went through the middle of Newcastle.
Oh yes, yeah.
And then I went to Leeds, did my degree at Leeds Art College, and then postgrad at Manchester. So once I was 18, I moved off.
You've just crept down on an angle, haven't you? Really? So Leeds, straight over Manchester, then you ended up by the coast.
Well, yeah, but there was 20 years in London in between, like after I left art college. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you can always hear that twang in your voice, mind, even on the commentary. Now, bear in mind, all our listeners, if you don't know who we're speaking to, crawl out from underneath that rock you've been under, and you can obviously recognise his voice. Obviously, you're a huge part of Eurosport, a huge part of motorcycle racing in general, in journalism. So how on earth have you not lost your accent? You're just a well-spoken North-East lad. It's brilliant. We've got a lot to learn, Chrissy.
I didn't want to particularly lose it. Some people think I've lost it. I don't know where it lies. Mm-hmm. I don't know where it lies. I'm always pleased when people identify it as coming from the North-East.
Mm-hmm. So you went off to the sort of art college, and is that then linked with how you got into journalism? What was the sort of link to start this sort of your career?
It was an idiotic boyhood hobby, really. I mean, it was originally cars and car racing when I was a kid. I absolutely loved that stuff. I mean, to a ridiculous degree. And it just happened that a friend of my dad worked at ICI. ICI employed 15,000 people. They employed half the population of Billingham, didn't they? And Dad was there, and he got given this great load of old motorsport bags from the 1950s, because this friend of my dad's, knew that I loved the history of the racing even then. And so I got these old magazines, and he just happened to throw in 4 little A5 hardback books about motorcycle racing that dated way back. They covered the first year of the World Championships in 1949, and then the season of short circuits in the UK in 1950, and also the history of the TT and the Manx. Beautiful little books. I still have them. They're useful. They're amazing little books. And that was what made me think, this motorcycle stuff looks good, doesn't it? So I persuaded my mum to buy me a copy of Motorcycle Weekly, and or Motorcycling was it called then, and I thought, this looks great. And then I found that I could get to local scrambles. There were local scrambles around the place, and I thought, I'll go and have. The guy in the next street said, why don't you come with me to this scramble? And once I got and saw that, I was absolutely hooked. This motorcycle stuff was great.
Was the interest, was it always in spectating from the sport?
Was
there ever that urge to give it a try yourself?
Never. I started, the second time I went to a scramble at Woodhouse Farm near Great 8, and I took my mum's Kodak Brownie camera and started trying to take absolutely rubbish pictures with it, and then, and that's what got me interested, really. The writing stuff I learned from my dad. My dad was a wonderful writer. He was a great musician, but he was a wonderful writer, and I learned my writing style from him. So I got into the journalism that way. But remember, I'd gone to art college and went down to London and worked as a magazine art director and graphic designer and all sorts of stuff down there for the thick end of 20 years.
Fantastic. Because it's funny, actually, on the way over here, me and Dom were just, cracking on about loads of stuff, and we ended up talking about previous jobs and like what we've both done in the past, and like just weird little things that, obviously you're familiar that I used to work in Nando's in,
yes,
and you talk about that
I
in the
love
commentary.
that bit, even though I didn't know what Nando's was.
I've never been to Nando's.
I haven't.
Thank God there's another North East lad that hasn't been. We normally get picked on for doing that. But obviously, you've just jumped straight into that world, really, haven't you? Obviously, the art.
Well, no,
it's brilliant.
I started taking. I was always off going to motocross meetings and taking pictures, and actually trying to sell the pictures for 2 and 6pence each.
Straight into the business side of it. I like your word. Click. They are so nice.
Yeah, but they should have been getting sold for like 3 times that amount. It was pitiful, really, because all the effort I was putting in, like in the dark room and printing the stuff up and all this kind of stuff. And but then I think it was actually Motorcycle News. When I started going abroad to motocross Grand Prix. I contacted Motorcycle News and said, can I do anything for you? And they said, oh, yeah, we'll have some of that. That was 125 GP racing because my friend Roger Harvey, who's still motocross Grand Prix consultant for HRC, for Honda, he was racing 125 GPs. And he said, come on, man, come over to the French Grand Prix. It's only like 40 miles from Calais. So I got myself over there on a kind of overnight sleeper and ferry and stuff, and that was a complete tale in itself. But I managed to get there, and I did a bit of work for MCN, and that kind of started things off gradually in that direction. Mm-hmm. So I started doing photography and journalism and remember, Trials and Motocross News launched in 1977, I think it was. So that was perfect timing for me to start get some work for them.
What was the link from going from writing to then starting to getting a microphone put in front of you and?
Because I'm not blowing smoke up your arse, Jürgen. It's just the sheer fact that you've got such a distinctive voice. It's actually you could read a bedtime story, and I think half of our listeners would just fall asleep.
I do for my grandchildren.
Oh, there we go. Then I bet it must be in school gone. My granddad can read a better story than you. They can shut up, man. They can. Jack Burnicle. Fair enough, son. I'm gonna just back away from here.
You sort of see a lot of, especially in if you look at the Eurosport team, a lot of the commentators for the racing will become. But the professional riders that either through injury or retirement then sort of start, diversifying and becoming journalists or commentators. So it's a very, particular skill and a particular interest. Was it just that you had such a broad knowledge of the racing and therefore you got sort of tunneled into talking about it? Or
no, it was the first guy who got me into it was Alec Wright, who was boss of Kawasaki Motors UK. And he ran the motocross Grand Prix team for Kawasaki for a long time, many years. And his son was Colin Wright, who went on to, I think you've had some association with Colin Wright. You know how he behaves.
That was Alex.
That was Alex's son.
Wow, okay.
And it was Alec Wright. It was known as Ace Boss, who was the guy who he had a heart of gold, but he could be pretty savage with people when he wanted
Father
to
like
be.
son.
Yeah, precisely, very similar. And but Uncle Alec. He got me to voice a video for the year that Kawasaki won the British Open Championship, Jeremy Watley in 1991, and on an Action Workshop Kawasaki, and I voiced that for him, and he started telling people, Jake's bloody good at this, ice, what I mean, and also at the same time. Another friend of mine, Julian Ryder, who we'd worked together because I'd started getting work as a photographer quite a lot as well, shooting road tests for magazines and things. And he was the road test editor for Bike magazine. And Julian was working with Keith Hewan for Eurosport. And they wanted to kind of skive off to Sky, do a bit of work for Sky, but not lose the work at Eurosport. So they said, we'll just get Burnicle in to cover this. It's a supercross. He'll know what he's talking about. So I went over to Paris, which is where Eurosport was based, and I did this Supercross, which came from Helsinki, and it was full of people I'd never heard of. Even the Americans were kind of complete unknowns, you know what I mean? But anyway, that was the thing is that they ended up working full on at Sky, and became legendary World Superbike commentators during that period of the 1990s. So I started picking up the work that they kind of left behind at Eurosport. But then it was mainly the off-road stuff until Eurosport got the World Superbike contract in 1998, and they asked me to become commentator on that. And I was thinking, yes,
I've made it.
Weirdly, I'd just been to Ewood Park to take photographs of Carl Fogarty and his dad George, outside the ground, because that's where Carl had been doing some training in inverted commas, and he was I can't remember who that was for. That might have been for Bike Mag. But anyway, I turned up, and as soon as I spoke to them, Foggy, who was a motocross man originally, he said, "You're that guy who does the commentary on motocross on Eurosport? I said, yeah. And I'm about to start doing you in World Superbikes as well, as from 2 months' time. And so that was a weird coincidence, you know.
And speaking of like people, you know, recognizing your voice and being sort of the man behind the picture a lot of the time, it's quite rare for the cameras to actually go into the studio and to, you know, a lot of the time it's behind the racing.
Yes.
So you've got quite you've got a very famous voice in the racing world, but maybe not as famous like visually, if you know what I'm saying. Do you ever get like answer a generic phone call to the house and hello, and is that Jack Burnicle? You know, someone ringing up trying to sell PPI or something.
Hello, it's the Inland Revenue. Oh, it's not Jack, don't worry.
Yeah, do you ever go to like a parents' evening or a doctor's appointment or anything, and they recognise?
It happens in some oddball places. I can remember. I can remember the Rhino House at Chester Zoo. Suddenly, Mr. Burnicle. You know, like someone recognising me, just talking as I tend to do. And there was another time
trying to wind up the Rhino. Do something. This is crap. Oh, it must be Jack. That so 50 quid for a ticket and it just scratches its arse. What's going on?
It would be good if it did that.
Just sat there.
So that first year going into World Superbikes, did you used to watch it as a fan? Were you familiar with the riders and the teams and stuff? Or did you have to do a lot of research?
I had to do quite a bit of work, but I'd always kept my eye. I'd always been interested in the road race stuff. There'd always been quite a lot of I'd done so much work on the kind of motocross and supermoto trials, enduro, all sorts of stuff. Eurosport used to cover a lot of stuff back then in the 90s, and I was doing everything except the road racing, really. But like when I'd gone over to those wonderful Guidon d'Or supermotards outside Paris at the Circuit Carole, when they had Eddie Lawson and Kaczynski and guys like that, right, and as well as Brock Glover and Mike Healy and other great off-roaders, and all together, and it kind of inspired your interest in meeting them for a start. I'd get talking to people like Gardner and Lawson, and obviously I was interested in what was going on the roads. But I had to. No, you have to do a lot of work. You always have to do homework for stuff, even when you're doing stuff that you're familiar with.
But even now, you're racking off names like it was like yesterday to you. You know, you just you totally get absorbed in this moment. You know, it's like you say,
but I can't remember where I put my car keys down a minute ago, mate. It's a terrible, distorted memory, really.
People do talk about, once you sort of fill up your memory, then things that, like, as new things come in, other things drop off. But it's weird how it's the recent stuff. So like you say, like stuff like what were you doing yesterday, or like something like really random.
What day last week was that?
On 1972, you remember exactly like weird things. It is funny that, but
Jeremy McGrath knocked me pint over.
For those first few years when you were purely doing World Superbikes, obviously back then British Superbikes was on BBC with Charlie and Steve Parrish. What year was it when that transferred over to Eurosport? Was it
2007 we started on Europe? No, sorry, 2007 it went to ITV. Sorry, 2006 it went to ITV.
Right.
And the lovely Barry Nutley was the lead comms with Whit, I think. Mm-hmm. And Whit was working on World Supers with me, which he'd started with me in 2003. So we've been doing it a ridiculous length of time. Mm-hmm. And then 2007, they asked me to take over as lead com at ITV. And ITV thought, bless him, what was his name? Moody? God, I've forgotten the name of the guy who was in charge of stuff at ITV, but he thought that they had it all set up again for 2008. But it turned out that BSB were already kind of getting in with Eurosport. So Eurosport took it over in 2008, and they asked me to start doing the lead comms. So I just stepped from ITV to Eurosport on British Superbikes.
And then from then it's been that duo with like you and Whit ever since then. Obviously there's other commentators that come and go and for different races and stuff. But it's that sort of famous duo, you and Whit, and you bounce off each other great. It's... we actually put out a little thing saying that on our Patreon, saying that you were coming on, and we had a few messages straight away saying like you and Whit are people's favourite duo in the commentary booth. You must have had some fantastic, travelling around for World Superbike events.
Oh, lovely road trips. Absolutely, he's a wizard to travel with. It's just because we got the same fanatical interest in kind of parallel things, really. It's just been great fun.
Oh, no, well, obviously we're going to touch on a story about a tom-tom here, because Whit was very open about talking about used to take his tom-tom on tour, and you were like, you don't need that, sod off with that, and you're like, essentially, you're like Captain Birdseye with a map, and you just turned up, you're on the flight going, don't put that, we're going through here, we're going to do this, we're going to do that.
I became very thankful for his equipment in the end, because it got us places that I'd really struggled with. There was a couple of occasions I did have an elaborate hand-drawn map of how to get from Malpensa Airport to Monza without using the main thoroughfare that got you into all the traffic going towards Milan, and that worked a treat. I've still got it, beautiful little hand-drawn map showing me how to get there, and that worked.
It must be an amazing part of the job, getting to travel to all these like cool places all around the world.
Well,
really.
For me, I was, I'd been such a fan of motor racing when I was a kid. To actually go to places like the Nürburgring and Monza, it was just like heaven. It was. I was amazed, absolutely amazed. To go to those places was beyond my wildest and all that.
What's the most obscure place you've been with the job, if you know what I mean? Like Russia for a racetrack or anything like that? I'm trying to think of somewhere that we would never have heard of.
I haven't got. I did go behind the Iron Curtain when the Iron Curtain existed into communist Czechoslovakia, but that was to motocross Grand Prix in 78 and 81. So you'd fly to Prague and then get an absolutely atrocious little Skoda hire car that one of them really broke down on us. We had three cylinders, 3 of its 4 cylinders, or was it 2 of its 3 cylinders working by the time we got it back to the airport? That was a mess. But that was interesting, because you had to go to the Czech embassy to get a bloody visa and all that. You had to spend a day at the Czech embassy getting things sorted out just so you could go there.
Getting patted down with the
I haven't been
and the first time I went was a road trip with Roger Harvey in 78 to the 125 GP. Was the final and deciding round of the most amazing world championship that year, with 3 guys neck and neck to win the championship. And so it was a road trip to Checo. And that was great. I really enjoyed that. But when I took my camera out and trying to take photographs of the border crossing when we were waiting, Roger was absolutely livid. He said, "Put that bloody thing away. You'll have us in jail, mate. We'll be done for."
I actually had an experience years ago when we went to Cyprus on holiday, and there was a part of Cyprus that was taken over by the Turkish, I think, and basically it would be about 50, 60 years ago. The Turks invaded this, this section of Cyprus, and they basically just ran in with guns and just said, "You've got half an hour to get out," to this whole like sort of village or town, small town, and for the last 50 or 60 years, this place has remained absolutely untouched. So if you go, there's still meals on the table. There's people were just going about the daily business, and they had half an hour to evacuate. Right. But they've got this big border set up, and there's like there's watchtowers and stuff on the Cyprus side that you can go and you can like look over. But there's absolutely nobody allowed to go in this area. And there's signs up everywhere saying no pictures, like the camera with the cross going through. And for some weird reason, I would have been about 5, 6-year-old, and me and Dad were out on a scooter, and for some weird reason my dad pulled up at the border, put the scooter on its stand, and went and got a camera. And bear in mind, it's just totally barren, unused land behind. And there was just long grass. Out of the long grass, a young soldier jumped up with a machine gun and started running at us. And I swear down, my dad ran, heart beating out of his chest, got on this 50cc scooter, started up, and we had to go along like a road, totally open road, so that this soldier would have had like a clear chance to shoot. And we're just going along for like 20 seconds, 30 seconds or something, just gripping as hard as I can. And we got round the corner, pulled up somewhere safe. And I've never seen my dad, so he was like, his heart was going, and like
it would be.
And I was that young that I didn't really appreciate like the situation, and like I was like quite I just didn't sort of realise the actual danger, and I was going, "It's all right, Dad. Like we're safe here." And he was like, "That's not the point, son. I've just thought we would be shot."
So, right, from this little story, Jack, we've discovered how you got your addiction to adrenaline, speed, all because essentially you were terrorists, potentially. There you are. Wow, Chrissy, you're like an onion, son. You've got many layers, haven't you? You just keep chipping away.
I mean, I haven't done that too much travelling. I've done a little bit of racing in sort of France and Spain, and a few times when I've been over there, I've been sort of just going down to the local town, and I've been in the middle of they have all these like festivals in Spain, don't they, for different saints and all kinds, and like street festivals where all the town goes and all dance, flamingo and everything. You must have come across some like really cool, like weird celebrations.
Valencia, one weekend when we were there for World Superbikes, and Valencia had I can't remember the name of it. Damn it. Huge annual festival they have with massive, grotesque kind of papier-mâché models on parading around, and they all get set alight at the end of the weekend. That's really dramatic stuff, especially when you're in amongst it with Chris Walker. Anything can happen.
Absolutely love it, man. That's it.
You mentioned that I noticed that. Did you see the Guy Martin stuff when he was trying to replicate the jump over the wire fence and all that?
What did you make of that show? Because I had my opinion on this a few weeks ago.
I thought it was historically it was lovely. I loved all the historical information, but any self-respecting motocross rider would have just popped over there without a second thought. Really, it was the wrong person doing it. The wrong person doing it. But I did meet the guy who originally did. I spent a wonderful day, thanks to a motocross legend called Roger Da Costa. He and the other Europeans who went over in the 60s and early 70s and taught the Americans how to properly race motocross. Da Costa said they could only do it, he and Dave Bickers could only do it because they stayed with a guy called Bud Eakins. And Bud was the guy who was a close mate of Steve McQueen's, who actually did all his stunt stuff for him and did the jump over the wire fence. So Roger gave me his phone number, and I went to see him at his Hollywood bike shop and spent a complete day there. Oh, what a bloke! What a bloke!
You would have been a kid in a candy shop.
He didn't make any fuss about what he'd done, really. But he was surrounded by, he had the most amazing collection of historic bikes of all kinds going way back. But he didn't have the bikes he'd done famous stuff on because he wasn't really interested in them. Not bothered about them. One of them is International 6-Day Triumph, sold for just under $100,000 at auction last year. But Bud wasn't interested in that stuff at all.
It's absolutely fair to say that motocross is 100% in your heart here. Your eyes are lighting up.
Motocross as it was, mate. It's the way that it's gone now. It used to be big natural tracks, and when you went to different countries, you knew the different flavour of tracks that you were expecting, whether you're in France or Italy or the Netherlands or
was that the physical,
Switzerland.
Geological side of it?
Yes, right.
The sand
and now too often they're just kind of half the series is kind of outdoor supercross tracks that are just hand built with lots of obstacles and no hills and a few grandstands to park people in instead of having fans. But the wonderful thing was you were so close to it, packed in around the track.
Mm-hmm. You were briefly showing us before the interview that you write a column in Dirt Bike Rider.
Yes.
And what month are we looking at there? You've got it on your table here. Is that the January one?
No, it's the February one. Know the way the publishing world works. The
February
one comes out now.
So in the February one here, obviously it's your own photos and the way you describe it. And when you look at the photos, the sea of people. And you can, for us now, I think it's fair to say there is no motocross scene. You can't just get on a bike and go to a track. There's no more local scene for it whatsoever.
Well, certainly not in our native northeast. They just aren't the clubs and they're not the tracks. The tracks have all gone. Because they used to be able to use simple farmland. Just, so it was a fairly straightforward operation for little clubs in Durham and North Yorkshire to set stuff up.
Do you keep your hand in with motocross? When I first heard your voice in motocross, Paris-Per-Se, 1992, I believe. It was Jeremy McGrath and David Villeman. Now, David Villeman went straight from the 125, winning the championship, straight into his first year at 250 Supercross.
Yes.
And McGrath, one of my heroes, he was just a fat little American who ate too many donuts, and he could absolutely walk the floor with anyone, Chrissy. I'm telling you, he used to adjust his clutch mid-flight, and Villeman was just a French nutter. He was just loose, fancy. He never kept his feet on his pegs, and all he wanted to do was win this race, and it was just
epic stuff.
It was unreal, and obviously, me growing up, I never had motocross bikes. Always wanted one. Always wanted to get into motocross. Never did it, but I used to play that video time. I literally burnt the video out watching it every night, and I've literally without getting all melty on you, this is a huge moment for me, because at no point when I was watching those videos would I ever get to meet you. And here we are, ruining your Saturday morning.
Not for the first time. Not for the first time.
And other than, obviously, we've touched on the motocross and the tarmac racing, do you have interest in, like all the different, so you've got supermoto, speedway, trials, and anything else takes your fancy?
All the disciplines, because I've worked on them all, and I've met a lot of the guys. I've commentated on them, I've interviewed them, I've written features on them, I've done all sorts of stuff. So whether it's motocross or extreme enduro or trials, I just know all the top people. I'm really blessed because of that. I can't believe I've got that spread of stars who and just competitors who, like you two for a start, who I know. It's amazing, really.
Do you know your experience across all, like the full spectrum of the motorcycle and fraternity, if you could say that?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you see a difference in the, like, are we all sort of one of a breed in terms of like our characteristics, or do you see a difference from like motocross to circuit racing or anything?
There's definitely a difference between us and trials. You need, like, you know what I mean? We're bombing around the place like pissed gazelles. You need the elegance of a landing swan in trials, Chrissy. We'd be no good at it, son, I'm telling you.
I'd say there are a lot of common traits. I think the most startling thing about moving from, the most welcoming thing about moving from the motocross or the off-road paddocks into world superbikes was the fact that the paddock was still as open and friendly and welcoming as the off-road fraternity had been. That was really great. I didn't know what to expect when I arrived in it. It was absolutely very, very warm and quite intimate. And I think the biggest surprise was how small people were, because road racing jockeys tend to be a lot smaller than motocross guys on the whole. Yeah. And I was used to kind of Dave Thorpe type figures, 6'2", broad-shouldered, sturdy fellas, and suddenly there were lots of small people around because that was the preferable size to be. Perhaps it's why I've always been quite endeared of the 6 foot plus road racers. Their style, that kind of the gangly knees and elbows kind of way of riding a motorcycle has always appealed to me, because I've always liked the way that the Camiers, the Reddings, the Danny Buchans, those sort of guys have to clamber around a motorcycle because of their sheer physique.
Have you ever ridden a motorcycle?
Yes.
Ridden motorcycle. So you obviously understand the dynamics of it.
Yeah.
Ever done a track day?
No.
Never done a track day.
Be terrified. No, far too terrified to do that.
Because your full-on job is literally commentating, spectating, observing, getting details.
Yeah.
Now, in your opinion, when you look at the taller riders and you're talking about the actual physical capability of it, describe to me quickly what would make your perfect rider. Height, kind of thing. Like, even give me an example, because I've heard Peter Hickman discuss quite a fair bit around the TT course, his physical leverage on the bike for turning at high speed. His arms are twice as long as mine, and he can just lean it out and just pry it in.
Yeah.
It's interesting how you're discussing body types
and
that kind of thing. So in your opinion, what would be the perfect body type?
I have absolutely no idea.
No, because obviously Pedrosa, I'm thinking like Pedrosa compared to Ridden.
I think Pedrosa, bless him, was probably just a little bit too much.
A little too small.
A pint pot, wasn't he? I think...
it's a crap question. It's curious.
Well, look at the way that... I really love the way that people like Pedrosa, Stoner, Marquez, I just love that the way they... To see that amount of input, to see and to be able to take certain things that close to the edge and just constantly get away with it I just always thought was fabulous to watch. But I've always...
It's kind of impressive on both ends of the spectrum, isn't it? For really tall or really small.
There was a wonderful expression used with the recent departure of a former trial star called Rob Edwards from Thornaby, actually, the northeastern lad, and I had to give a bit of a eulogy at his funeral over in Middlesbrough. And
that's a send off.
But a guy who'd ridden in the same team as him at one point said that there are people who win championships and races, and there are people who are champions. And he said, and Rob was one of the latter. And I thought that was a wonderful way of putting it, because I've always really loved, like one of the greatest characters in World Superbikes, for example, was Frankie Keeley. I mean, wonderful rider, wonderful competitor, but such an engaging man, and so absolutely engaged with his fans. And he did so much for the sport. It was still, long after he'd retired, you'd go to Monza, and the big swarm of people following someone around the paddock, it would be all around Frankie, because he was still kind of somehow the main man, because they knew his appeal was enormous. And I think there's so much that goes into a motorcycle racer and what he brings to the sport. And I think that not necessarily the winning of championships. I mean, it was the same with Nori Haga in a slightly different way, because he was could be quite unpleasant with his fans and actually do his best to evade them. But he wasn't alone on that. But as a character and the way he rode a motorcycle, that I don't know, Whittam once actually tested Haga's factory Yamaha, his R1. And he said he could not believe how it was set up with all its weight on the front. He had no idea how the guy rode it. He said he must have had incredible feel for what the bike was doing at the front end to be able to even make the thing work.
And speaking of smaller riders, obviously we've got Tara McKenzie in the British Superbike Championship.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the way Taz can race an R1.
Exactly. And you regularly share the commentary booth with Taz's dad, obviously Niall.
Yeah.
That must be a sort of different dynamic in terms of commentating on a race with. I mean, we'll probably get Niall on the podcast at some time, and the Mackenzie lads.
Oh, you should do. He's
for his stories.
Great family.
You know, that dynamic of watching a race and commentating on a race, for your job to be commentating on a race and for your son to be in the race. It must be so difficult for him. And
I've asked him about that. I said, how do you cope with this? And also, how do you cope with not being biased? I mean, I don't like bias in commentating. I'm increasingly appalled at the way that the BBC stuff, they talk about are British people in athletics and stuff like that. It drives me bloody crackers. I mean, it's hard enough for me if there's someone I particularly get on with and like, and would love to see do well, and I've got to kind of rein it in a bit when I'm actually doing a commentary, because everybody's got to be treated alive. To be fair,
I think Niall does a fantastic job of that, because
his knowledge of the BSB paddock and all the classes and the people who are in there and what they're doing, and it's fantastic. He's an amazing co-commentator to have, honestly.
There's one race in particular that I like to watch back on YouTube, and that's my maiden race win from this year at Donington Park.
Yeah.
And it always makes us laugh, because the beginning of the race, obviously I'm racing against Taylor, Taron's older brother, and at the beginning of the race, like as we're coming to the grid, you mention the fact that obviously Taylor's like on pole position or second or whatever, and you say, and Taylor actually had a little off in morning warm up on the Tyco BMW, and then as we go past that corner, you're like, and that's the corner that Taylor crashed on this morning, and things, and then Jack goes, I think you mentioned it again, and Jack goes, Niall goes, Jack, would you mind just stop mentioning that? And it was obviously that, like, he's trying to put that to the back of his mind, and then obviously Taylor did end up actually crashing in that race as well. From him and Michael Rutter as well, which you never see Michael Rutter coming off that bike. And but obviously Richard Cooper, having won the championship, stepping up he's replaced Taylor McKenzie at Baden.
Yes.
I think he had his first run out at Almeria the other day, and obviously I'll be going up against Richard this year for the championship, and looking forward to to the season ahead.
It's about time you had a consistent year in contention from beginning to end, young man. Yeah.
And over to BSB, obviously.
That's you tell, isn't it? They are. You better listen to the man.
Are you looking forward to 2020 in the Superbike Championship? A few big moves and
always. It's always fairly fascinating what might be coming up without ever being able to predict what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Usually.
Is there any particular, obviously Christian's moving to the Ducati. We've got Bradley Ray going over to the BMW. Kyle Rice.
So I'll have to be talking a lot to Brad instead of to Christian, because I was at Tyco BMW is my natural resting place when I get the opportunity for a bit of hospitality.
Right. Okay.
They look after me really well, and quite often I kind of I'm asked to do a little chat with the boys, so it's going to be a different cast list this year. I don't know what Brad's going to be like. I know I'm all right with Taylor, because T-Mac is wonderful on a microphone, really funny lad.
Both the Mackenzie lads are, you know, they're like a comedy duo. Do you do much on social media? Because the Mackenzie lads are quite.
I'm sure they're
quite big on social media.
They ran me ragged. I can remember having to take Mackenzie, the old trout that is, when we who worked as my co-commentator on World Superbikes, you see, for 2 years, 2001, 2002, after he'd retired from racing, and he was absolutely marvellous. And I had to take him back home to Ashby de la Zouche, and they have a huge area at the back of the house where they have a training track that they used to that they race around, and also they were playing football madly back then. And they're absolutely. He sat down and had a chat with Jan about the weekend, and I was left to get run ragged by the two boys playing bloody football. Something that I believe you're very good at, Christopher.
Yeah, I only found that out from one of your, obviously one of the BSB races. That you were an accomplished footballer. What the hell?
Yeah.
What are you doing in bloody motorcycle racing, you idiot?
He could be earning an absolute mint and not hurting himself. Yeah.
Go on, explain yourself. Explain yourself, young man.
Actually, your native Hartlepool, I used to play for there, and I actually got offered a contract at Hartlepool.
Really?
When I was Hartlepools.
Yeah, the pools. Yeah.
The pools, yeah. But it was around the time I was doing my GCSEs, and it meant going. I think it's about 50 mile down to Hartlepool from where I am. 40 mile. No, maybe 30 miles, 50 minutes, I think it was.
About 35 miles, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And it meant going down there like 3 times a week, and it was on top of my racing, on top of other things. It was just too much of a commitment, and I wanted to...
You tit.
Listen, motorbikes is much better than football.
I went to a crappy rugby playing grammar school, but there was one lad who we used to try and play football, but it was mainly with a tennis ball in the schoolyard, and there was one lad who stood out. He was called Johnny McGovern, and he went to play for Hartlepool United under a certain Brian Clough, who started out as a manager at Hartlepool United, and Cloughie then took him to Derby County, was it? Or Nottingham Forest, one of the two. Anyway, Johnny McGovern ended up as captain there, won a European Cup. Wow. Just think of what you could have been doing if you'd gone to Hartlepool instead of racing motorbikes.
So, okay, you're obviously very motorsport dependent. Do you follow any other sports? Obviously, you know a bit about Christiana's football.
I like sport. I just like sport generally.
Yeah.
I like watching sport. It's why I don't have any satellite kind of telly and sporting channels, because I'd be sat in front of it all the time. If you've just got the main channels, then at least only occasionally you get sport that you can have a look at, like Match of the Day tonight or something like that.
So aside from, obviously, you're busy with your commentating and like journalism, research, how does Jack Burnicle fill his days in between? Like, do you have any particular hobbies, or keeping yourself out of trouble?
Keeping myself out. Well, I've got I have an autistic son, so I'm his carer. So I'm pretty much looking after him. Taking him to whatever appointment. It just keep me his life rolling along and keeping it as happy as possible. Really. We're Cafe Society boys. We like our local cafes, whether it's behind here. We've got this beautiful Victorian park, Vale Park, that's our back garden. So they've got
lots of trees there if you ever need them cut. You know?
Yeah, I'd like you to knock a couple down. I'll tell them that when I want those 2 down, which I'd like to have down, I'll say I've got someone who could do it. I could pay him, and if you'd let me do it, you know.
Oh no! If you can get me a BSB ride, I'll do them for nothing, mate. I'm telling you now.
Me get you a BSB ride? Get off!
Come on, the amount of persuasion and possible blackmail material you'll have on them.
Absolutely none. Absolutely none.
It's an incredible spot here, just down by the Mersey. Is the accent round here? Is it quite strong?
It's do you know, it's very it can be not the local one. The Wallasey New Brighton voice isn't particularly, but when you get visit, there are times when I think people are speaking in a foreign tongue. Honestly, I can't understand the word they say.
Go down for some chachen.
I didn't know Steve Brogan walked in.
I do a kind of dance-based keep fit once a week at Wallasey School of Ballet. That's my one. I used to tap dance there, but my knees eventually gave up, so I do the kind of keep fit stuff. That's and that's aside from walking, that's the only exercise I really do, to be honest.
Because it's quite a cool spot in terms of you're not too far from the Lake District. You're not too far from Wales.
That's
right.
not
too far from Liverpool, Manchester. There's
Peak
Island.
District.
You got the boat just there, so you can obviously just hop on and go over and everything.
Do you know? I only went to the Isle of Man once to commentate a British Supermoto Championship round at Yerby, Derby, where Christian Ridden really made his mark as an 18-year-old. That's when I first met him. He was an A-level student before he went to Huddersfield University to study sports science, and he put it over. Oh, there was a really hard Cheshireman who was kind of the reigning champion, and they had an absolute knockdown battle, and the last corner stuff where Christian laid him out. And this guy was absolutely livid. He was truly upset. And I just thought, Christian's got what it takes here, hasn't he? He's a good, this lad. And he was bright. And but that was the only time I went to the Isle of Man. And Roger Harvey, my dear friend, who was working with the Honda road racing team at the time, he took me on a lap of the course. So I did get to actually think, do you know what? I for the first time, I can understand why people take this on. Because just to have this as an open road, especially across the mountain, just winding up a motorbike all on your own, blimey, it must be sensational. And I kind of understood for the first time, even though, for example, I plead with McGuinness every time I see him to just stop it, man. You know, you've survived this long, you've got a lovely family, you don't need to, you've got nothing to prove. Just stop it. Go back to a bit of veterans motocrossing and bumbling around doing that.
That's have you ever thought about commentating? You ever wanted to try and worm your way into actually being in the hot seat, a bit of Chris Kinley on the radio kind of thing? Never fancied doing the TT, working with the TT?
Gerald Witt tried to get me a place alongside him for a while, but the guys who were covering it didn't take him up on the offer. Mm-hmm. So, I think the TT it's extraordinary, isn't it? It just frightens me a bit. Like, we lost Daley Matheson last year, and he was a local lad from Stockton who we'd met when we did that Donington Park thing the year before. That was the first time I'd met him. And I don't like Davy Todd doing it. He's only a kid, you know. I mean, what does he need to be doing that for? Because he's good on the short circuits as well. Mm-hmm. But once it obviously gets into your blood, then it would seem that you're not going to stop the lads doing it. Yeah. Strange enough, I don't worry about Hickey. He just seems to be such a measured character and have such a composed head on his shoulders. You feel like he's got it all under control. Mm-hmm. But then we used to think that about David Jeffries, you know, and if the extraneous incidents can happen that bring you down.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's it. And other than obviously the BSB at the moment that you do, and do you still do the European stuff?
No, I do motocross Grand Prix. I've come up again. I've just had confirmation of the first round, which is on actually the same weekend as the Phillip Island World Superbikes at the beginning of March. So, but the motocross we do from the studio, and we've just moved studios from outside of London in Middlesex into Chiswick, because Eurosport's been bought by Discovery TV, and we've gone into their glamorous headquarters at Chiswick High Road. Very nice.
Oh, very nice. They are.
Mind you, the finances seem to have become a lot tighter since this glamorous takeover.
Just be harder, man. Just be harder. Walk in going, I am Jack Burnicle, I demand a pay rise.
No. It doesn't work like that, son. It doesn't work like that.
It should. Just start swinging your weight around. Right, so I'll tell you what, we're going to have to get on with some quickfire questions, I believe. So, Ridden, you firmly believe, we had you up at the North Yorkshire Road Racing Society Club.
Supporters Club.
Sorry, I messed up at the end there.
You were there.
I was there. I still can't say the name.
In fact, you were the Rider of the Year or something, weren't you? You got the Riders Rider of the Year award.
Which is a huge... I tell you what...
You were stunned, weren't you?
I was, because obviously it takes a fair bit, you know, for other riders to put you on that pedestal, and that was a huge honour. That really was, because obviously it's normally Chrissy Rouse's name on that trophy, so it was a bit like, get in, have some of that. You know what I mean? But while you were there, it was very, I loved it how it was. We saw a different Jack Burnicle in the way of, you were just totally open rather than trying to be unbiased, this or that, not incriminating whatsoever. You were a lot more relaxed version of yourself. And how we got talking about the Scott Ridden, and everyone was asking the same question: did you think he was going to do it? And you were very open. You were like, yeah, of course he was. And, you know, from his background, MotoGP rider, and where he came from. And like, so my next question to you, how do you think he's going to get on with the next level? Do you reckon he could do it again? Win another championship?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a fantastic talent. And by the way, are your headphones still working okay?
Yes.
Yeah, mine went off, so I've just...
mine is still working.
I thought you were leaving. thought you were off for a coffee in the
Wishful
park.
thinking there, wasn't he? Like, just get out.
Red. It's going to be really interesting to see Ridden and World Superbikes this year, and obviously Johnny's been so dominant for so many years now. It's
Jonathan. I told you that before we came on air.
Did I say Johnny?
His name is Jonathan.
Sorry. It'll be nice to see it's somebody go and shake it up, and hopefully some exciting races and whatever. World Superbikes has been, we were talking about the glory days, just like when you first started commentating, and there was some amazing years of World Superbikes.
Do you know the greatest race ever? The greatest race ever for me that I forgot about when that question was thrown at me at that North Yorkshire Road Racing Supporters Club do, wasn't it? And the greatest race ever, if you can look it up on YouTube, was Hockenheim 2000 Y2K. The bikes and the riders involved in that at the front of the field, fanning out 6 abreast, slipstreaming. Oh, it was absolutely epic. And I'd forgotten until someone brought it up for me on YouTube. But it stops 3 laps from the end, and I can't find the last 3 laps. And the last 3 laps were the winner was Hager on the on that Yamaha. He beat Edwards with an outrageous round the outside last corner pass. Completely outrageous. But the whole race up until that point had been just extraordinary, honestly. And the guy I'd forgotten that Akira Yanagawa on the 750 Kawa had just taken the lead for the first time, because everyone took the lead at some point, when the whole thing just blew up in smoke, absolutely flat out, bang! Everybody like dodging around him and then just carried on. But Akira had just got to the front when the Kawasaki let go. But it's an epic race. And another one was sketchy conditions at Misano in 2004. And the only person who went out on slicks was Killy. And he was like 20th he was off the back of the field at the beginning, and then the conditions gradually improved, and he came through and he caught Laconi on the factory. He was on that yellow old Ducati, and he caught Laconi's factory Ducati on the final lap. And dear old Regis was smoking the back wheel. There was absolutely nothing left of the wet rear, and Keeley stole it from him on the last lap, and then burst into tears at the end because his grandma had just died, and it was all due to her inspiration. She told him to put that slick tyre on. It was fantastic.
Well, if anyone out there can find the end of that. Like that race, I'll be pleased.
Hockenheim race was something else. I'd love to see that again.
Oh, please get in touch and send us the link, and we can forward it on.
I do find it a bit unnerving that you for example, Christopher still listens to his.
Only his mother calls him that.
Still listens to that race that you won last year, because when you're doing a live commentary, you think it's just in there in the ether, then it's gone. But of course it's not. People listen to all your blunders and your mistakes ever after. You know what I mean? It's not just gone into the ether and disappeared.
Is there any standout moments for you in the commentary booth that the either for good or for bad? Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, I'm not going to venture into the bad ones. Thank you very much.
Only one. Come on, only one.
Or just good memories, like from does anything stand out for you?
Almost. I think climaxes to races. Yeah. Would you be aware of the fact? Certainly, it seems to me that, and one of the reasons I love old school tracks, as well as my love of the history of the sport, is the fact that any circuit that finishes with a huge hooning, balls out final turn produces epic finishes. Forget these nadgery little chicanes and dead stop hairpins. They're crap way to finish a lap. When you've got a hooning great final turn, you just show me one that isn't like that. Brands Hatch, Phillip Island, Monza, the Parabolica. These are where we get these absolutely Mugello, where you get drastic finishes because people come hooning round those final turns, neck and neck, slipstreaming, ducking and weaving. That's what makes the closest finish ever in the history of the CIV Italian Championships, which started in 1911. We had last year in the Supersport at Mugello, 3/thousandths of a second between the wonderful Kevin Manfredi, who's built like a brick shithouse, really solid, lovely bloke, and the tiny little Massimo Roccoli. 3/thousandths of a second between them as they crossed the line. And and that's out of a huge final turn, followed by a bollocks kind of full-on straight for them to sort themselves out. And that's where you get great finishes, isn't it? Not out of little squirrel outbreaking down and turn, and you know what I mean.
I was actually teammates with Kevin Manfredi back in 2014. I did a few rounds in European Superstock for. Can you remember Jerry Bryce's Honda team?
Yes.
Jeremy McWilliams was the crew chief that year.
Yes.
And he was a really interesting character. He always used to have big eccentric crashes every round, massive crashes.
Yeah.
But one thing that always stands out for me, at the time I would have been about 16, 17, something like that. And we used to get changed in an old Arctic lorry, so it's where all the bikes used to get transported. So we'd go in, get our leathers on and stuff. And before every qualifying session I would go in to get my leathers on, and Kevin used to have a special lady friend in the paddock that used to come round and pleasure him before qualifying.
What's her name?
He's tiny, but he's covered in tattoos, and he's got that sort of Salvador Dali
it's transformed
mustache
into a beard now.
Oh, okay, now he's got a beard
because he's a very hirsute man.
Yeah. And he's just had this sort of two sides to him.
Pekka Vekkanen used the Finnish lad who was once a 125 world motocross champion back in '85 for Kajiva. Amazing. He was. He used to get seen to before races, so that's. Yeah, so there are obviously some lads it really suits. Yeah.
I tell you what, the paddock's going to be a different place in 2020, isn't it? It's going to be like the quiet before the storm, and everyone's just going to hear the gentle breeze and the chassis rocking of caravans throughout the paddock.
Well, actually, Kevin Manfredi, he came briefly into the British Superbike paddock on a Super Stock 1000.
Yeah, it was Morello,
with Morello, and he wanted to be in the paddock. I thought he was going to be back in the paddock last year, but he wasn't, which is a shame because he was trying to mix the two because he was riding Super Sport in Italy. And incidentally, the CIV Italian Super Sport Championship is like World Super Sport used to be. It's epic, a mixture of the older experienced guys like Cruciani and Roccoli against these up and coming kids in their late teens and early 20s, and it's really rocks. Yeah. It's a terrific series.
I think Kevin was really keen to come over, but he had a deal with, I think it was actually the what's it called, the Endurance. He rides for Kawasaki World Endurance team.
He does, yes.
And I think he's got a big sponsor from Italy, and he had to be riding around the world.
Hasn't World Endurance just come on? What the standard of riders, and we had that 12-hour race at Portimao a couple of years ago that was won by thousandths of a second in the dark. Oh, what an epic! David Checker coming from behind to win that for Yamaha was extraordinary.
Which endurance race was it when basically a bike blew up? There was a red flag caused by, was it Johnny Ray's team or something? And then.
That was the Suzuka 8 Hours last year. That was strange. I'd never come off air before, and we didn't actually know who'd won the race. It was very
that was
peculiar.
Odd, I think they caused the red flag, and yet they won it. Is that correct?
Yeah, it did seem a bit outlandish, the actual verdict in the end. Yes, because Yamaha were already celebrating. That was what we went off air with, Yamaha celebrating victory.
I know. Last lap, you just started slacking off your sun plug in the pit stop. That's it. We're leading. Get the torque wrench out.
And then obviously,
do they still have sun plugs?
There was that incident with Van der Mark and not so long ago Sepang on the two Yamahas that they got taken out. Who was it? Van der Mark and. I can't remember the guy, but there was a recent massive crash in the endurance racing. But yeah, there's a lot of British lads as well who not top class, like top of superbikes, but throughout the BSB paddock, there's just
I love it when people like Dan Linfoot and lads like that get rides and disappear across and because I'm always keen to see where they are, what's going on with them.
James Westmoreland, Ben Godfrey. I think Gino Ray goes over.
Yes, Gino does. Gino's done some. He crashed out of 4th place at Oschersleben last year. Gino, he was on for a terrific finish. Yeah,
Gino, like when Gino was 16 years old, he won the European Superstock 600 Championship.
Now that was one of the epic races of all time. That was Portimao,
yes.
and and that was all down to the final race.
Was that against Van der Mark?
No, it was against. I've forgotten his name, and there were three or four of them involved, and any one of them could win it. And the guy that he finally did it by a point over has also finished several times runner-up in the Italian Supersport Championship. He's never been a champion in anything he's competed in. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the guy's name, which is annoying me.
He was on the George White, was it a Honda CBR? Yes, 600.
And Gino, he didn't actually... He only got the place he needed. He snatched the place he needed on the final lap to get that extra point that was going to give him.
Was Loris Baz in that race? Loris Baz around that sort of era?
I think Baz... Didn't Baz finish? He won it as a 15-year-old, but I think that might have been the year or two after.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back to my previous point at the beginning of this podcast. It's still amazing that you can just rack off every position, every name. This is phenomenal.
Well, I've just failed with one name.
It doesn't matter. It's still impressive. You could be telling me Pinocchio was on the bike, and I'd be believing you. It's
that was his name, Pinocchio. That was the boy. Yeah.
A little bit of a a diversion, but I'm just wondering: is there anything in the future that is on the bucket list for you? And is there anything that like a dream that you would like to do, maybe aside from the race and aside from the job,
or even on the job, your dream opportunity?
No, people in the off-road world are very keen for me to do a book of writing my photographs and some writing.
I can't even read, and I'll give that a go. You know what I
mean? But you know what? It's. You've got to properly set your mind to it. Mm-hmm. That's what you've got to do. You've got to. That's a project you've probably got to set your. It's almost like you'd need a year's sabbatical. I feel like I need a year's sabbatical to get the whole thing sorted out. And I'm at my stage in life. I haven't got the time to have a year's sabbatical from what I'm doing now because I'm enjoying what I'm doing now too much. I mean. Next month, I've got the Hawkston Park International Motocross, Jeffrey Hurlings and all those boys on a proper old school track, which is wonderful combination of factors to have the top riders in the world come to Hawkston Park for a pre-season international. And then the week after that, we've got the classic dirt bike show running the stage there down at Telford. And that's such fun because you get to meet old friends from long ago. It's a kind of gathering point for people, and you can yank some of them up on stage. It's great.
Are you big into your autobiographies, like racing autobiographies?
And I'm not big into them. I've read some of them. Mainly, I mean, if I've got part of my wonderful collection of motor racing books here in this shelf, but a lot of them upstairs in my studio, and. Actually, I've got the 2 volumes of Colin. We lost Colin Seeley a couple of weeks. What a man he was! Right. Lovely, lovely bloke. And I've got his 2 amazing volumes here. He put together 2 glamorous, great books, and all the proceedings went to charity. He was. I always used to see him at Brands Hatch. He gave me, we were talking about maps earlier. He gave me a immaculate hand-drawn map showing me how to escape from Brands Hatch down the tiniest back road imaginable that would eventually bring you out at Dartford for the Dartford crossing. Bloody brilliant he was.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well,
I think you've been saved by the bell here. I think the question, the question board's packed in. But honestly,
the question board's packed in.
It's broken.
I wondered why you lads have suddenly become completely inattentive. Look at this.
You're an intimidating man. You're literally a professional at this job. You are, because we're just a couple of Geordie knackers trying to pretend to be you. But I think you've been saved by the bell there. And honestly, I think what a great interview. And thank you so much for your time.
Just a minute. You're about to become a columnist in UKClubSport British Club Racing News, Mr. Dominic Herbertson.
Well, I'm over the moon that I've just found out you're doing dirt bike riders, so I'll just cut sections out of that and just stick it in UKClubSport and replace the names. So I'm laughing.
I don't think somehow the subject matter would appeal to the Club Sport boys.
That's it. Local rider Barry Tearsdale-Croft cleared the whoop section, landed in the tabletop and made a glorious job of it. There you are.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
That's
I
really
appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it.
You're not familiar with podcasts, really, are you?
I'm absolutely not. I have no idea what all this is about.
Well, basically, so it'll be going out all over. We'll actually get downloaded all over the world. I think we're in about It's been downloaded in, I think it's something like 100 countries, 100 different countries.
Do they all understand Geordie? As far as we know.
Nah, I've got a couple of Jamaicans thinking they do understand one, but there you go.
And some people in Wales have fooled me before now.
And, I mean, we're well into the 30s with the episodes now, so there's funny little, like little sayings that we say, maybe like northeastisms,
yes,
and then people pick them up and get messages on.
Talking of which, that my surname Burnicle it comes from the Viking Bernie Kill, which is what apparently the Vikings would holler as soon as they landed, meaning don't kill the bairns. Wow. Which is, of course, northeastern for kids. Don't kill the children.
On that note, we better go, mate.
He says, don't kill the.
Do you know where the word Ben comes from as well? Why Geordies? Geordies use Ben. It's the Norwegian word for child.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
we get a lot of Norwegians coming over. They used to do a ferry from South Shields to Saint Christiansen in Norway, but things are so much more expensive in Norway. We used to get loads and loads of Norwegians coming to the Metro Centre for Christmas shopping.
Oh, really?
Because they would come on the ferry for like a weekend,
and
everything's like 40% cheaper or whatever. So they would pile the car full of stuff and then drive back for Christmas for the bands.
For the bands.
But,
it's amazing how people don't understand words like Gansey and stuff like that. They don't know what you're talking about, or Clemmy or something like that.
Yeah.
And they say what?
What did you say? Gams?
Oh, Gansey. Don't you know Gansey?
No.
Really?
What's that?
Oh, that must be a South Durham Teesside one. It's a sweater, man. If you've got a big sweater on, it's a Gansey.
It's a Gansey.
Well, my dad used to use it. It's a Hartlepool one.
I mean, there's slight changes, like from where I live to where Dom lives, and there's things that Dom says that, like, there's. Do you say something for your lunch?
Wait. We got Scran. My favourite one's Glar. Where you're working in the Glar to Northumbrian turn, getting stuck in the mud. Where I was in the Glar, we see me pop. He's a proper Northumbrian, you see. But I tell you what I find fascinating about this country is I travel up and down it all the time, and is how tribal we are.
Yes,
we are horrendously tribal, like you just said. Like what? 15 mile separate we.
Oh, that's enough for a big change.
And I bet it's the exact same down here in like Liverpool area, and you just think, what? It's phenomenal. It still amazes me.
And you can trace it through the friends I have in, say, Castleton in North Yorkshire, through Teesside, and then through Durham up to Wearside, and from you guys up towards the Scottish borders. You can just trace those changes in the accent all the way.
It's funny trying to explain words as well. Like, do you know how we use canny quite a lot?
I know,
but canny can mean quite, and it can mean nice. But you could say some things. You could say somebody's canny.
Yeah,
you could say
over here it doesn't mean quite what we think it means. And the same as the word bonny. When I called a girl a bonny lass, I didn't realise that over here it means kind of homely and domestic looking, completely different. I said, so I didn't mean that.
Do you know what?
That's quite a sturdy girl.
Do you know what? One of the worst ones as well, which gets misinterpreted all the time, is pet. So like my dad all the time, like say, I
use that constantly.
So we'll be in having some food in a pub, and the waitress will put the food down. My dad would say, "Cheers, pet," and people think pet as if like a pet dog or an animal, where it's short for petal. It's a term of endearment.
Exactly.
And it's funny and Dom's got one which, to be honest, I don't use, but he thinks it's a northeast thing, but he calls every.
Well, no, to be honest, I think it's more of a family thing, very much like a Northumbrian borderline. It's young'un. Now, for me, when I use young'un, you're a young'un, right? It's a state of mind, then a physical age. Now, someone described me as age as levels. You know what I mean? So if you're 30 or 40, you've reached level 40. So age is is a different thing. You know, you get labelled when you're a certain age, which is wrong. So if you're grumpy, miserable, and you've not got time for people, you're just a miserable old git. Simple, plain, and that's how you explain it. But when you're young and you're full of life, you're full of enthusiasm. So when you meet someone for the first time and they've got something about them, you think, oh, wait, he's a fun lad. He just started up going, hello, young'un, get yourself in here. And like someone, like I have a couple of lads at work, like Scottish old Bob, man, he smokes tabs and drinks 6 cans of pop every day. He's like, hello, young'un. He's like, yeah, read mate. What's going on? It's just, it's words and it's man, powerful words.
Is there any funny ones over this way? Any other funny ones that stand out?
No, it was mainly being caught out by Bonnie that really stunned me. Yes, I got that completely wrong. I've been very wary of using that since.
In the local coffee shop, getting mugs chucked at him. Get out of the shop, you Jeff Burnicle. But anyway, we're going to have to tidy this up, but thank you so much yet again, Jack. Honestly, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, lads.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you the racetracks throughout 2020. And
well, yeah, if you've got time, come along to Hawkston Park on February the 9th, mate. It'll be a good do. It'll be a good do. If you want to see some proper motocross.
Proper sport.
Okay, proper sport.
Thanks very much and catch up soon.
We'll see you at Silverstone. Yeah. Silverstone, early April. All right.
That's the one. See you then.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Jack.
So we're back in the studio, and we're joined by the lovely Zoe Burn. You're on camera. That camera A, Zoe. So wave a camera A for our YouTube video.
I think this might be my best side, but I'm not sure. I tell you what, I've got the best view in the house of you two, and you're all snuggled together as well.
With these microphones, right? If you speak if you keep your lips within a few centimetres, about an inch off, that's so bang on.
If someone was walking by this caravan right now, just put your lips, just bring your lips in, dear. Bring your lips in.
This is like low budget porn, isn't it?
So we're sat in a motorhome on the side of the side of my house. We've got these two big white lights, two cameras. What do the neighbours
And
think?
you two are just so close and cute. It's like
Austin Powers, you know the silhouette scenes. The neighbour behind the road going, he's brought a female this time. Sinners, dirty sinners. And obviously we're joined by the bucket as well. So obviously the first half of this show, obviously pre-Jack interview, we were struggling like a couple of tarts. Mainly me, to be fair. I'm hyperventilating like a broken whoopee cushion here, and I've got me plastic bucket ready to eject any vile.
How many dumplings was it?
4 dumplings. I've had 4 dumplings tonight, Chrissy.
How many quality streets on top of that?
3.
Mm-hmm. And a big bowl of
yogurt.
Yeah, with honey.
Yep. That was my victory meal, and it's having the last laugh. I'm telling you.
I tell you what, you've got to hand it to Dom losing the stone in a month.
It's just put it back on.
But, good effort. But anyway, so we're joined by Zoe Burn from UKClubSport magazine. If you don't already subscribe, get subscribed. Great magazine if you're into bike racing.
Yeah, I need some money. It's January. I'm quite poor at the minute. So if you wouldn't mind.
And obviously no racing really on at the moment. Have we got any updates on the sort of club racing scene?
Because we've been away a couple of weeks and we're being born idle. So if you could fill us in with a crack, that would be fantastic.
There's not a lot, you see. You should have got us in a busier week. There's been a bit of news in the last couple of days. We've got ARA, Derby, Isle of Man, are going to run some CB 500 Twin Series this year. So that should be good. That should be... Things are
it's definitely... your favourite class, that?
I love it. It's the only class that I would race.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't race. I don't really ride either.
If there's anyone out there with a spare
CB
500,
that they don't want anymore because it will end up in bits. I'm sorry, I've just smashed your mic there. So we've got that. Then we've had a bit of good news with Wirral 100 Club, which they had been in the news for a bit because they cancelled one of their summer rounds.
Yeah, I seen them right in the middle of the year for not enough entries.
Yeah, there wasn't enough entries. Anyway, there was a bit of an outcry on social media, and it paid off. Particularly Dave Stewart from Thundersport, who really, he might be Thundersport, but he really cares about the clubs, and he sort of went to a lot of effort and said to people, you've got to support your local clubs, otherwise we're going to be in trouble.
Use them or lose them.
Use them or lose them. And that might be my cover headline, actually, for the next one. Thank you very much.
Credit chasing the racing.
Yeah.
I tell you what, there's been a few things. Obviously, Hilly Watch was born on the podcast.
It was.
And coming up in our next edition, we've got a new columnist sat next to me here. How... Obviously, he'll have sent in his draft. How was it, Zoe?
Do you know?
I actually haven't had a review back, so this is fresh here. Look me in the eyes when you say it.
Do you know I was disappointed?
Oh, how weird.
It was
right, yeah. I'm going to hit you with the sick bucket here.
I was disappointed because there wasn't a single spelling mistake. It was structured well, and it was actually good. So
don't sound surprised.
I was honestly,
I'm like an onion. I'll make you cry and have many layers. Oh yes, my dear mother. Wait till I tell my dear mother.
I tell you what, was it Mrs. Smith, your teacher, who You said, I don't know, you've referred to, he slagged off his teacher a bit there. He didn't.
She's a bit,
well, do you know.
Read the article.
We'll
Buy the magazine.
I'll send
read
her
the
a
article.
copy. And then I asked him for a picture.
She can barely read herself. How she could call me, I have no idea.
I asked him for a picture and he went out with his little wood chopper thing and posed.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a private message. My little wood chopper, you know what I mean? Sorry, you can't discuss these things on this show. We're classy, you know. We're classy.
If people send enough money in, I'll send it on, you know. We'll share it.
God, times are hard. Please buy a magazine. Please buy a magazine. There we are.
I never actually finished telling you about the Wirral because you just went off on a tangent.
God, yeah.
As we do. Hold on. This is our show. We can do what we want, Zoe.
Know, but the people in the northwest will get upset. You know, it's all right for us over here.
But they're in the west, it's fine.
Well, I know they cannot reach.
Continue.
After
media.
Dave Stewart encouraged everyone to support the local clubs and other people said, we'll support it. And the good news is Wirral have put that race back on, which I think is, if you're into club racing or any sort of grassroots level racing, usually when a race is cancelled, that's it. It very rarely goes again. So the power of the people sort of made it work again. So
is there any sort of new classes this year, or is there any there was a thing about, was Thundersport running just a Saturday meeting or something?
Thundersport have got all sorts of things going on. I think it's that sort of thing at the minute. They're all trying to outdo each other, which is great for riders. So they've now got a sort of a Saturday championship or a cups where you can win on a Saturday. So that's just going to be based on races on the Saturday, totally aside from the main race day. So that's an extra race that you can get in, or if you wanted to go along, just do a day, as you tend to do. I've seen you dropping in and out of races for a day.
I've actually got mates that would probably do club racing, but they can't be bothered to go away for a full weekend away from the family, all that. So maybe a one-day meeting is kind of that might be a market for some people.
You know, I think you go along and do that one-day thing, and then if you want to stick around for the next day, stick around. If it rains, go home. If you're not in for a title or something, you know.
And obviously money's got a big part of it as well, because if people can literally, I can afford half a day or a day, I can't afford the weekend. Yeah. It's perfect, isn't it? So no, fair play to them, man. Fair play.
And not so much club racing news, but obviously it's been news, massive news this week with Norton going into administration. Obviously, it's been in the news for a while now that there's problems going on. There's drama. There's problems going on there.
And I'm just going,
Yes, as a respected journalist in motorcycle sport, in motorsport in general, what's your view on it?
no comments.
Get out the bloody motorhome. Go on, get out.
Do you know, I haven't read enough up on it to risk
informed decision.
To risk. You guys can get away with saying the wrong thing. I'd probably be in serious bother.
What's today's date? Today's date's the 30th, isn't it? We leave Europe tomorrow, dear. We have our rights back, so go on. Right, by the time, when's this going out? When's this going out?
I don't know, tomorrow.
Hey, all I know is we're out. We're out.
If this goes tomorrow, we're out.
We're
out. We're stopping out. Out.
We're prepping. Out. No, but anyway, what do you think about no one?
It's a shame.
It is. No, I totally agree with that.
I tell you what, for me, there's 100 people that work there, and if you think 100 people that have risk, they've all got families, they've all got bills, mortgages and stuff. So and on top of that, there's hundreds or thousands or whatever of people who have either owed money or have maybe paid for bikes, and so that there's a lot of people out there through no fault of their own are in really bad situations. So
that's the problem, isn't it? And if you go on social media, everybody's on there slating this, slating this, slagging this. And so you actually have to stop and think about the people that it genuinely affects.
Couldn't agree. And that includes Stuart Garner, you know what I mean? Obviously, he's made some decisions, some wrong ones, obviously. You know, he's made some right ones. He's definitely brought Norton up to the modern era. But obviously, shit happens. You know what I mean?
And
that's the bottom line of it. It is a fickle world, and it is gutting to see. But the mad thing is, what does that mean for Hickman? Hickman's representing Norton on the Superlight.
We obviously speak if Smiths have already bought the bikes and have got all the equipment, then they can obviously run a privateer Norton, maybe even not even call it a Norton. And I mean, obviously it's such an iconic brand, British brand.
This is the thing, and that's the problem.
I hope somebody comes in and sort of saves it, and maybe like a new owner and new management, and that would allow maybe the 100 people that work there to keep paying the bills and stuff?
It probably will. I think I think once these initial problems died down and everyone stopped kicking off, then that's when the sort of recovery might start, because I think nobody wants to lose that. We don't want to lose an iconic brand like Norton. We don't want to lose Norton. We don't want to lose anything like that, really.
But the thing is, the only people that are going to reamp that is essentially what Audi have done. Audi own Volkswagen, they own Seat. That in my eyes, to make Norton...
Ducati.
They own bloody Ducati, but there you go, you see. Yeah. But this, that's my point. The fact is...
like a bigger company.
No, a bigger company's going to have to get Norton on the top step at the TT or even back in British or back at that Empire, it needs a humongous cash injection.
There'll be someone somewhere who doesn't want to.
What would be nice? I know the sort of the sports bike market is on massive decline for the years, but maybe obviously we've got Triumph there, who are doing really well in other, not sports bikes as such, but like other bikes areas of the general, market.
Road bikes,
for a company, I'm not saying Triumph, but like Triumph or another company of that caliber, if they could take over Norton and run it as a sort of keep the name, keep the the bikes and stuff, something like that, I presume would be the best option. But we don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
No.
So totally, what I do on this show is obviously jump from subject to subject.
I noticed you've ditched the sick bucket. You seem to have recovered quite quickly.
It's a hand reach here to either hit myself or anyone in here.
The camera.
Oh, no, it'll be all right, man. That one's on Zoe. It's fine. No, so what's happened with Triumph at the moment as far as Hickman and the Yamaha move?
He's left Triumph to go for Yamaha. And
yeah.
But there's no political reason behind that, or was that just a team decision? I'm just wondering.
Probably from the Ulster Grand Prix battling with Lee Johnson. Then I think the Yamaha was a bit faster, wasn't it? So maybe.
But that's because bloody Lee weighs the same weight as his left leg. But then you think the Triumph was actually up with him. Now, we've discussed this on shows previous back. The only person who took that fight to Peter Hickman that entire week. Bear in mind, Hickman had 7 wins at the Ulster, which is rest in peace, because it's not happening this year, which is an absolute gut-considering. I'll tell you what, let's swiftly move on to that. What's your take on that? I put it as a road racer, it's devastating.
We never want
absolutely
to see any road racers lost, and we just don't, because when you lose them, it's difficult to get them back.
We've actually had loads of tweets this week asking us to get somebody on the pod, and obviously we couldn't this week, but we will sometime really soon to have this as a bigger topic and get somebody who has a bit of inside knowledge on the sort of Irish side of things.
It's difficult for us to actually, if you're not into road racing, it's difficult to actually understand what it is in Ireland compared to here. The Irish road racing scene is huge, and I think something like that, and it's a worrying time, really. There's a couple of races sort of gone by the wayside this year, and that's difficult for teams as well. Teams are sort of planning the year, and there's a whole big chunk gone.
And the financial budget side of it,
exactly.
Obviously, when you're trying to get a big name behind you, and it's like, right, we used to have 3, now we've got 2. It's a bit like, well, hold on, why would I put it in? How many rounds are there at BSB? 12, you know what I mean? Well, what would I rather put my money into? 12 of that or 2 of that? But
exactly.
You see, the other side of that coin is, no disrespect to you lot, because you revisit tracks, if this is becoming essentially the dodo of motorsport, they run it once a year, and it is, quite frankly, on a total biased point of view and unbiased view at that sometimes, it's the world's greatest spectacle. It is the ultimate entertaining stage, and we have to get behind this now to keep it alive.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We need an applause effect.
Yeah.
In the background.
Why haven't we got canned laughter? I mean, this is terrible. You've got everything else in here.
And
canned laughter.
On the topic of road racing, obviously news that the Northwest have just added a third superbike race
on a Thursday, by all accounts.
So as extras,
they're waiting for the weather. That's why.
They're waiting for the weather.
Well, because historically we've always had good Thursdays.
Thursday's
and
the
then,
day.
And then
Saturday is just
it just
hell
turns
on
to
earth.
crap, doesn't it? And you just think. Mervyn White in the Northwest 200 team must just be going, what the fuck? You're just screaming at
And it's good, and it's really sad. You sat watching it online, because I sort of use the Northwest. I generally watch it online, in preparation for the TT, so I'm getting myself all excited and stuff. And you get to watch Phil McCallan just looking really getting more and more sad over the course of the day as it doesn't stop raining, and his face just drops further and further. And he's just makes me laugh so much. And he's like, I hope this goes ahead. And that was the worst Irish. Phil, I'm so sorry.
And I was going to say,
next week we've got Philip McCallan on. Yeah, we'll mention that then.
Speaking of the Northwest as well, Steve Plater plays a big role at the Northwest, and he's jacked himself enduro over in Wales, I think. Do you know how obviously I've seen he's been injured, but do you know the severity?
I don't actually, because I've got to be honest, I saw the press release, I thought, oh, that looks nasty, but I didn't have to cover it, so I just sort of looked over it and put it to one side. So it was all right.
What you mean, Steve, is get well soon. She misses you.
Soon.
Speedy recovery, lad. But no, bloody hell, you know, that lad's gone through the hell in general with his career.
He hasn't had enough for a while, so he just thought, I'm gonna just
spook the wife a bit and let's jump off.
It's all been quiet. He's had too much of an easy run recently, so.
Go on.
No, sorry. Even before we leave the Northwest 200 subject, now obviously the glimmer of hope in the darkness here is the fact that the Northwest have got a 2-year secured sponsorship deal with
Phonacab.
With Phonacab. So the good thing is this year and the following year are secured.
Yeah.
For road racing. So
well, at least
before everyone slits their wrists, that's the crack.
And also this week I think it's just been announced Dean Harrison's 2-year contract with staying with the same team. What is that the full? He's doing BSB, Northwest.
He's doing BSB, Northwest, TT, and the Southern are the sort of confirmed ones at the moment.
100, okay. And what about, because he's usually a regular at Scarborough, is any news on that?
I think. I believe that will be I don't believe Silicon Engineering Racing are going to attend Oliver's Mount as a team.
It's still early doors at the moment, isn't it? So it's a bit like
we imagine Dean will probably be there. I mean, Dean actually loves Scarborough, so I think the sort of official line will be that if Dean goes, that's Dean. It'll not be a team sort of thing. Yeah, and I'm sure Dean will be there.
Well, it's still early January, not for much longer, but it's still early January.
Well, it won't be, and we'll be out.
And. And our last
Britannia,
Britannia
rules the waves.
Our last topic of the pod, we've got ourselves a mini bike winner last week.
So what happened then? Did you get a 10-second start?
Taking a victory?
No. I psyched them out. I was spiking their drinks. I was doing the nines like it was absolutely howling wet, and all these southerners turned up, and I was like, son, you don't know what a wet playing field looks like, young. And smoke a rollie and we're off. No, but it was.
Did you roll it yourself as well?
Naturally, with all my 9 fingers. But no, it's obviously. I'm actually gutted that the British Mini Bike Winter Series is finished. It was for me. It's given me a huge confidence boost on the bike. The most important fact is, like, crashing a bike and costing you £5. Like if I picked up my bike, you picked up your bike, or when you pick up your CB 500, you let go of it standing on tarmac. It's £1,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why we're always harping on, like, every rider in the paddock. So can I get some support? You know, it is, the begging ball is out because the sheer expense of it. But you think, I've been out on a bike, I've crashed my brains out, and it's riders craft, it's kept my eye in. And I tell you what shocks me every time. And so, my friend, Nathan Smith, writes one of your articles in your UKClubSport.
Well, he hasn't. He's written one, so can you sort it out, Nathan?
Right, Nathan, now that I know he listens, he needs to pull his finger out of his ass. Does he just text you? That's so weird. Obviously, he's done something anyway. But anyway, Nathan, now that we're slagging you off on air, no, it's a case of, like, the organisation of that club. You know, you think mini bike, you think Chinese bits of crap, you think, what a bit of a waste of time. It is totally the opposite. I can't recommend it enough.
The events are ran in January, like it should be a bit longer.
But you see, the new season starts out in March, and and the grids are twice as full, and the grid is just these lads treat it as serious BSB. I mean, and when you've got lads with that much dedication, the pace is shit hot, and I mean, like Kyle rides like in attendance, Richard Cooper, Lee Jackson, and if you go and ask them, who they are amazed at the pace. And these lads are front-end runners.
So
at
when are
British
you getting
level.
on it, Chrissy?
He's contracted these days. He can't do now.
I'm hoping to get a motocross bike soon off Kawasaki, and I'm looking at doing a bit of enduro. I've never done any enduro before, but I've been sort of asking around, and I fancy a bit of off-road riding for fitness, but without the big jumps and taking too many risks and stuff. But just a few things before we'll wrap up the interview. I've just been looking through our reviews there on iTunes. We've had a few new reviews. Last one, we'll always say if you're going to leave one, make sure it's a 5-star. We only accept 5-star reviews.
You, Zoe. That includes you.
So
includes.
It's been a long night, lads.
Our last one by Stevie J. He said, "Bit late to the party getting into the podcast, but I've binge listened to all of them over the past 2 weeks, and I'm hooked. Dom and Chrissy are great hosts, both informative and funny. Great insights into their own careers, into bike racing in general. If you have any interest in bike racing, especially roads and BSB, you need to listen. You need to listen to this podcast. Keep up the good work, lads. Keep up the guests coming, and keep it lit. You're both lovely, lovely lads." See, he has been listening, knows the catchphrase. And then we've had another one off John from Soho. And he said, 5-star, honest, funny, and a real insight into racing. Great guests who tell it like it is without the PR spin.
Has he been listening to the wrong show?
He's obviously been listening to Eugene Laverty's one or something like that, hasn't he? So there we go.
He's been listening to Dean Harrison. He's got one going on. So
yeah, he's just started a podcast.
2 episodes deep, isn't he? 2 episodes deep. You know what I mean? It's like, how many have we done now? Far too many is the answer. Jesus wept.
He's a busy lad.
He is a busy. Yeah, he's signed a 2-year deal. Did we mention that?
We've just been. Did we mention it?
You're starting to guess yourself now. No, we weren't talking about Dean Harrison. Well, he's got a 2-year deal. If anyone missed that,
and
if anyone fallen asleep, and a podcast.
There you
go. All round nice guy.
Anyways. And you know who was paying attention throughout this interview? The same guy who's sat looking on his phone.
No, I'm getting ready to wrap up here. I'm about to reenact my sponsorship shutdown here because I did a crap job to begin with. So I've got a second chance round this. There you are. What do you mean, come on then? No, we haven't finished the crack. You're like, I'm just telling you what's going on.
It's cracking on, John.
It's cracking on. 10. It's cracking on. But no, hold on. So I'm looking at the list here. Now, the good thing about this, the only thing I need to mention before we go, right? Obviously, this weight loss challenge, we opened up the door to everyone else joining in or anyone wants to contribute, right? My mate, Kirkup, right, who was going, I've just spoken to him a couple of hours ago. He's off to the Isle of Man to do his TT newcomers course. So he was off doing homework with him and Arlo Brown, local lad.
On the sidecar.
On the sidecar, right? Cool. Here, right? He started middle of December. Guess how much he's lost?
I'm going to pretend that I can't see the whiteboard.
I don't know, I mean
you don't know how to knack drama, don't you, son? You know what I mean? It's like...
2
Do you whisper in Emily's ear? I'm just not going to ruin it. I've finished. You know what I mean? You've got no insight for romance, have you? Emily, if you're listening, God love you. God love you. There you go. So anyway, right, I'm surprised you can read my writing. So anyway, Kirk, well done, even though this sarcastic prick next to me won't appreciate a bit of drama. Yeah. Well, look, that fat knacker lost 3 stone.
That is unbelievable.
That's impressive.
From the middle of December, mind. You know what I mean? He was a big lad, but the fact is...
From the middle of December, what, 6 weeks? What's he done? Chopped his legs off?
Honestly, the thing, 3 stone, I haven't seen him.
That's incredible.
He looked like a used condom, won't he?
So I know there'll be... Because I actually posted our weight...
I can't wait to see him.
I posted our weight.
Got a little hat on. Where you been? You didn't want to know.
I posted our weight at the beginning of January, so I think people have been sort of testing themselves against us. So I think obviously Dom lost a stone, I lost between half a stone and 3/4, I think, and then obviously we've got Kirk up there on 3 stone. So if anyone's beaten 3 stone, please get in touch, we'll send you some stuff. Do you want to do your sponsorship sponsorship thing?
Right, sponsorship thing. So obviously, sponsorship for episode 39 is brought to you by the Carol Nash MCN London show. And that is on the dates of the 14th, the 15th and 16th of February at XL London. Discount tickets are now on sale for just £18. The offer ends at midnight on the 12th of Feb. Tickets cost £23 after the 12th. So don't be tight right now and start buying tickets. They haven't wrote this, by the way. I'm just adding bits in. There is an option to buy a Paddock Pass, which guarantees a seat, giving a great view of the Michelin Thunderdrome racing action. obviously that I'm contending with some knacker called Michael Rutter, another knacker called John McGuinness, some knacker 135, yeah, exactly. Some Peter Hickman knacker, you know what I mean? God loves triers, and it's nice for them to turn up. They did write this. Emma here did write every word of this. She's the manager. Lovely voice. God, gorgeous voice. You can make love to that voice. Anywho, back to it. And towards the end, and the bottom line of this sponsorship, episode 39, is brought to you by MCN, Carol Nash, London Show, and get on the website at www.mcnmotorcycleshow.com and buy a ticket.
Fantastic.
That's beautiful.
And also, we've got as we always do, massive shout out to our patrons. Do you know what Patreon is?
I do, because you told me when you first set it up.
Not yet.
No.
So with our Patreon,
Have you subscribed? No, I send you a free magazine.
Only recently.
Chrissy subscribed.
I'm subscribed to the mag. Anyway, for people who aren't
There's cameras there. Professional Zoe forgot.
For people who don't know what Patreon is, basically it's just a way of supporting myself and Dom doing the podcast. Obviously, we're investing in a new studio, cameras, and all the equipment to do the podcasts. And obviously, we'll put them out for free on all the different platforms. But if you're in a position and you feel like you would like to support us for as little as, I think the lowest tier is $2 a month, you can do $5 a month or $10 a month. You can chip in a little bit and help us, provide the podcasts. And for the money that you chip in, we'll give you sort of behind the scenes access. You get asked questions to our guests, and we post the podcast for the $10 a month group tier. We post the podcast a full day before the general public get it, so a little bit special. And so really appreciate all the
nice.
all the patrons.
Get it a day early.
Yeah, and then the tweet about it as well, which makes other people join Patreon. So that's the plan anyway. So big thanks, really. Sincerely mean it from me and Dom. We really appreciate the support. And last of all, we've got a little bit of a sponsor for the show. NGK Spark Plugs are sponsoring us, and Dom, if you just passes that black bag,
there's goodies.
So what we're going to do is, if you share this, we'll pick somebody from Twitter, retweet on Twitter. We'll pick somebody from Facebook, and we'll pick somebody who puts us on their story on Instagram. So we're going to give 3 giveaways, and all what you have to do is just share this podcast. And what you'll get is, if you go on the YouTube, you'll see this now. We've got a black NGK beanie, which Dom, do you want to try it on?
Put it on top of your
black. So we've got if you go on YouTube, check it out. So we've got.
Oh my God, I've got a big.
There we go. So as Dom's modelling, we've got a black.
You look so different when you've covered your eyebrows over.
I know. We draft excluded.
That's why I'm unnerved.
So we've got them black beanies, and we've also got.
David.
You do look a bit like Craig David. And we've also got these lovely NGK. Do you call them buffs? Buffs. So you put them around your neck for when it's a bit chilly. So for the winter, you've got a hat and a buff. So all what you've got to do is share.
Like Gonzo from the Muppets.
Go on, put your buff on.
Nah.
So
it's going to be stretched.
So just share it, and I tell you what, the best way to if you've got Spotify, the best way to share it on your Instagram story is if you go on to Spotify, press share, and then it gives you it says to Instagram stories, and you can put it straight on there. So it says it like links it directly to the podcast. So spot on. And if you want to be treated to Dom with a hat and my glasses on, head over to our YouTube channel, and from us from here in the studio.
Tidy this up,
we've got we're over and out. So
you look like a woman.
I do look like a woman. I look like a fantastic woman there with my purple armour top. But obviously, big thanks yet again to our sponsor and everything. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And join us next week on Chasin the Racin for episode 40. Thanks, guys, and good night.
See ya.
Night.